Chapter 1. The Uchiha. Ninshu will unite humanity. Those were the last words of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of the Six Paths, the creator. Since the beginning of time, the human race has been embroiled in conflicts of power, greed, and ambition. It was a cycle of endless violence that was due to end when the sage taught humans the power of chakra. With that gift, he wished to bring peace, but humans have a strange habit of self-destruction. The chakra that was to bind became the catalyst for even greater violence between the two sons of the sage, Indra and Ashura. If only Hagoromo had understood that humanity's guilt lay in their twisted emotions, and that bestowing power on them would only embolden them. Proof of this statement was the conflict between the children of the sage that began over a simple matter of succession. Strength. The sage who taught the world the importance of peace could not teach his own children the same values. And that was the beginning of a massacre that lasted for centuries. A massacre that still happens every day. Chakra was weaponized by the sage's eldest son, Indra. Being the firstborn and the most powerful among his father's sons, he considered his right to succeed him legitimate. But the sage chose the younger brother and divided them forever. Ashura, the younger brother, loved his brother, but he was an obedient son to his father. He tried to make peace, but the sage insisted that Ashura be his successor. He divided the world. Those who believed in Indra and his legitimate right committed their families to him. And those who truly loved the sage above all else pledged their allegiance to Ashura. And that's how it began. Infinite war. As time went on, both brothers fought each other with their respective supporters, transforming their families into various ninja clans. The Uchiha and the Senju. Two opposing factions emerged that fought each other for centuries after the death of Indra and Ashura. Conflict ceased to be a matter of legitimate succession or fulfilling the sage's wish to become a matter of establishing dominance, pride, and vengeance. Peace never came, as the various noble clans that followed these two houses had their own plans and always continued to foment war. Various powerful individuals, groups, and nations began to hire these two factions for their own selfish motives. The era of clan wars. This was the name of the current conflict between the two factions. When the war between Indra and Ashura began, most of the world expected the eldest son's faction to win, for he was more powerful and talented than his brother and his supporters. But the Senju proved to be more resilient and intelligent than their older brothers, as they enlisted alliances from various other factions for their cause with cooperation, marriage, money, and other benefits. While the Uchiha, despite being the most powerful in combat, had a fatal flaw that they continued to inherit from their founder, Indra. Superiority. Following in Indra's footsteps and ideology, the Uchiha continued to believe in his ability, prowess, and Sharingan. They were called fire-bearers and were rumored to be descendants of dragons, destined for unimaginable greatness or outright insanity. The Uchiha did not form many alliances, unlike the Senju, believing that the lower and smaller clans owed allegiance to Indra and his successors, and that it was their duty to submit to their superiors. This isolated them, but despite this, they continued to survive and fight, as their skill with the Sharingan was unmatched. However, as the centuries passed and conflicts increased, the Uchiha began to lose. Their power began to wane as more and more clans joined the Senju, which only served to stoke anger among the Uchiha. In their frantic quest for power, they established the practice of clan members marrying their brothers or cousins to maintain the purity of their lineage and prevent the blood of others from corrupting future generations. Their insanity became so bad that any clan member who married outside the clan was killed, along with all of their children. Instead of killing their enemies, the Uchiha began to kill themselves. The Senju took advantage of this advantage to completely destroy the Uchiha, to such an extent that they no longer deserved to equal them in power and dominance. Indra's proud descendants continued to dwindle until another catastrophe struck them. The Sharingan disappeared. It was the worst devastation for the warriors who prided themselves on their powerful eyes. Many researchers and doctors suggested that interclan marriage was the cause of this phenomenon. Others suggested that the Uchiha were simply weakened, among other reasons. Whatever the real reason, it didn't change the fact that the Sharingan had disappeared, and nothing the Uchiha did manage to restart their prized dojutsu among their clansmen. Another century passed, and the fall of the Uchiha continued to get worse and worse. It was clear to everyone. The House of the Dragon was dying. Taijima Uchiha watched a group of boys practicing their martial arts in the open field. There were 5 of them, all wearing the same armor and a common feature. They were blood brothers. Taijima's 5 sons, heirs of the Uchiha house. The proud father smiled as he saw his 2 eldest sons engage in a deadly battle of Kenjutsu. Despite being only 8 and 7 years old, Madara and Izuna were the pride of Taima. His house could have lost its famous Sharingan and much of its world dominance. But this had not diminished the superiority of the Uchiha in ninjutsu, jinjutsu, taijutsu, kenjutsu, and many other arts. They were proud warriors, and their house still had enough men to continue their legitimate war against the bloodthirsty Senju. Taijima smiled as Madara launched a fireball towards his younger brother that was countered by a similar attack from Izuna. Madara was Taijima's firstborn son and his strongest son. He had inherited all of Taijima's strength and beauty. He was a skilled warrior and worthy of leading the clan in the future. And unlike his younger brothers, he was not weak. Izuna was the second son, aged 7, and successor to his house if Madara died. Although he was not as strong as his brother, Izuna was well liked by the members of his clan. He was a good leader, an efficient fighter, and a faithful defender of all his brothers. Taijima watched his 3rd and 4th sons continue their shuriken practice together. The twins, Yashiro and Inabi, were identical and shared their father's appearance. They were 6-year-old children and good fighters, though they were too arrogant for their own good, a trait that Taijima worried would harm them on the battlefield. And there was her last and youngest child. Taijima couldn't help but feel pain at the sight of the young man. With brown hair and fair complexion, he was the spitting image of his mother and his late wife, Hikari Uchiha. 5-year-old Naruto Uchiha, the 5th and youngest of Taijima's sons, was different from his older brothers. It wasn't just his looks, but also what he stood for, that made him an outcast among his own family and clan. Hikari died, giving birth to the child, and gave him his name. Taijima loved his wife deeply, and her death shattered him. He tried to be an obedient father to his 5 motherless children, as well as playing the role of leader of his old noble house. An even more difficult task with the Senju harassing them. Naruto grew up being the spitting image of his mother. He was a kind, happy boy who adored his older siblings, though most despised him and blamed the boy for his mother's death. Taijima himself had remained indifferent to his youngest son, taking care of him only for his basic needs. Naruto was not as strong as his brothers, nor did he have the iron will of an Uchiha. He loved too much, forgave too much, and most of the time remained oblivious to the world around him. Naruto would never be someone worthy or useful to the clan. The only reason Taijima hadn't disowned him was because he needed heirs in this treacherous world where children died, and most of all, because Hikari had made Taijima promise to take care of the child. Faced with Taijima's indifference towards the boy, the clan also lost all interest and ignored Naruto Uchiha. He was nothing more than a spare heir and a weakling. The strong survive, the weak die. Taijima frowned when Yashiro and Inabi taunted his younger brother when he failed to produce a fireball and ended up coughing until he lost all his lungs. "Damn weakling," snapped Inabi in disgust. Yashiro stepped forward to hit his coughing brother, but a shadow got in the way. Looking up, Taijima's 3rd son saw his elder brother standing in front of him with a piercing look in his dark eyes. "What are you doing?" asked Izuna, and narrowed his eyes as Yashiro clenched his fists as he stared at a frightened Naruto. "I'm teaching him a lesson. He is a weakling and a disgrace to our clan. He can't even perform a simple fireball jutsu," Yashiro said angrily, and shuddered when Izuna looked at him coldly. "He's our brother," Izuna recalled. "He killed Mom," Inabi shouted furiously. Izuna stepped forward, forcing his 2 younger brothers to retreat. Taijima was about to intervene when Madara sighed and grabbed the 2 angry children by the neck. "Come," I'll teach you a new jutsu by the lake, the eldest proposed with a smile. Really? Nisan asked the two boys excitedly with joy in their eyes. Madara was his hero after all. Yes, then go now. The two brothers cheered and ran to the lake to learn something new from their prodigal brother, completely ignoring their previous anger towards their younger brother. Madara saw that Izuna was still boiling with anger and put a hand on his shoulder. Let him go, Izuna. They are children, Madara advised, only to receive a heated look from his closest brother. Naruto is our brother, Nisan. Madara saw the frightened and tearful boy staring at them. I didn't hate him like Yashiro and Inabi, but I didn't love him that much either. In that sense, Madara was like his father. They both tolerated Naruto, but did nothing else. Izuna was the only one who cared about the child and took care of him. Okay, but don't try to play favorites, Izuna. Yashiro and Inabi are also our brothers, Madara reminded him patiently. Naruto too. Madara sighed again. His brother was stubborn and wouldn't give in. Very good. With that, Madara went to join his two brothers who were waiting for him by the lake. Izuna, furious, turned to his father and saw that the man was staring at him. Do you have anything to say, boy? Asked Taijima sternly, and watched the boy clench his fists. No, father. Izuna turned away from his father and headed toward his younger brother. The young man looked at him with tears in his eyes, and Izuna shuddered at the sight of his lips burned. My God, how stubborn he was. Nisan, can you teach me a jutsu, please? The shy boy asked. You're hurt, Izuna said hesitantly, and saw the boy shudder as he tried to touch his burnt lips. No, I can fight, just like you. Little Naruto proclaimed with such confidence that it broke Izuna's heart. But the truth was that Naruto was not fluent in ninjutsu. All Uchiha children were required to perform a fireball jutsu as a step into adulthood at age 6. In a few weeks, his birthday would arrive and he would be forced to pass. However, Naruto had difficulties. He was less skilled and stubborn, which caused him to injure himself most of the time. But if he failed in the right of way, Izuna feared that the boy would become even more hated in the clan, as the Uchiha never tolerated the weak. The only reason Naruto had a comfortable life was because he was the clan leader's son. A despised son, but a son nonetheless. I'll teach you, but tomorrow. Now we need to heal your wounds. Izuna promised, but the brown-haired boy shook his head. Now? Izuna smiled sarcastically at the boy's childish demand to learn when he seemed about to collapse from exhaustion. That is why Izuna loved his younger brother. He was a stubborn fool, but he never gave up. A boy determined to prove himself despite not having the support of his family. Well, I can, but then I won't have time to buy you a ramen, Izuna said with a sly smile. If possible, the boy seemed to have recovered the lost energy as he literally jumped into the air, excited, completely forgetting the cold treatment given to him by his other brothers. Ramen, Naruto shouted with his fist in the air. Izuna chuckled at that smile, happy to see it. Naruto had that quality. A single smile from the boy could take away from Izuna a day of tiredness. So when he offered him his back, Izuna's younger brother jumped up happily and grabbed his neck affectionately. You're the best, Nisan, Naruto shouted, almost deafening Izuna. Oh my God, how loud the boy was. How could an Uchiha be? Izuna looked at his father, who was watching them with a strange look. Taijima's second son simply gave him a respectful nod before making his way into the village, happy to participate in his younger brother's endless chatter. Naruto observed the vast city built by his ancestors. It was huge, with so many lights and so many people trying to sell so many beautiful things. He was fascinated to see new toys in a nearby store, but then he remembered that his father had told them that Uchiha played with swords, not wooden horses. Even so, Izuna saw him looking at the wooden horse and bought it for him. For that gesture, he happily kissed his brother's cheek, causing a laugh in his favorite brother. Naruto was happy whenever he was with him. Izuna never scolded him. Well, maybe when he tried to sneak away at midnight outside the city walls. Those were the only times his brother had raged at him, warning him that the world was dangerous, especially for an Uchiha. Naruto didn't know why Izuna said that, but he obeyed his brother. Yashiro and Inabi were always mean to him, teasing him, even trying to hit him whenever they could. Madara would put an end to that as soon as he realized it, but his older brother never talked to him much. And that hurt. So-san, Madara so we idea? Izuna looked at him in surprise as he continued to lead them towards the infirmary to heal Naruto's burned lips. No, Madara is busy. He is the heir to our house, our future leader. He just has a lot to do, Izuna said hesitantly. Talk to Yashiro and Inabi, but not me. I don't like it, Naruto said, his cheeks swollen red with anger. Naru. No, I have you, I don't need it. Neither the stupid Yasi-chan nor Inabaka. Izuna laughed a little at his brother's silly statement. Sometimes he had to remind himself that Naruto was a child and hadn't matured yet. He hadn't seen the battlefield yet, something all of his siblings had already done in various ways. Madara and Izuna had fought on the front. Even Yashiro and Inabi had fought under their father's guidance. Naruto was the youngest, and as much as Izuna hated to accept it, he wasn't very strong. Perhaps it would be if father and Madara gave it a chance, but that was unlikely to happen anytime soon. Her family was never the same after mom died. Izuna loved all her siblings. He respected Madara, took care of Yashiro and Inabi, but most of all he adored his little brother, Naruto. People said that he looked like his mother, and Izuna wanted to believe that his mother would like him to take care of her youngest son. He eventually managed to get Naruto to the infirmary and called a doctor to heal his wounds. His brother received immediate attention, as they were sons of the leader of his house. Naruto was very happy playing with his wooden horse while the doctor finished healing his burns and applied ointment and bandage. He even gave the boy some candy, which earned him a wide smile. Should we go eat ramen? Asked Izuna. Yes. Izuna hit his forehead as his younger brother ran out of the infirmary, causing two nurses to lose their balance and fall. He apologized on behalf of his brother and ran after him. Not so fast, warned Izuna. His warning came a little too late, as Naruto ran into some guards on patrol. They were about to scold him, but then they noticed who he was and looked at him with contempt. Even these disappeared when Izuna approached and glared at them. Izuna smiled when the guards shuddered at the sight of him, apologized to his brother, and ran away. They know where their place is. Still, he went ahead and slapped his brother gently on the head, making him frown. Hey, be careful where you go, little brother, Izuna warned him. Naruto snorted and crossed his hands on his shoulders, sitting face down in the middle of the street. Izuna saw many women and girls fall in love with the young man, and men who looked at him with disapproval for his childish behavior. Izuna touched his forehead. Then let's run, he said, not caring about the disapproving looks of the Uchiha men. Naruto's smile could have lit up an entire city. Madara found his two brothers chatting and eating at the ramen stand. Well, it was Naruto devouring his third bowl of ramen while Izuna watched him fondly. As he watched those two interact, Madara couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. He and Izuna were as close as brothers, but the bond Izuna shared with Naruto was something special. Madara didn't know how to feel about her younger brother. He was family, but he still had vague memories of the day his mother died giving birth to Naruto. He still remembered when she asked him and Izuna, her oldest children, to take care of her remaining children. Madara tried to get his wish. He took care of Yashiro and Inabi in life and in the war, but was not present for Naruto. Perhaps it was her resemblance to her mother or her innocence compared to her hard-hearted clan. Madara didn't know how to interact with the boy. He didn't want to be cruel to him like Yashiro and Inabi, but he wasn't enthusiastic about getting close either. But one thing was for sure, Naruto was an Uchiha and his brother, and Madara would protect him from harm. He just didn't know how to talk to this child. He was not Izuna. With a sigh, he decided to do as he was told. Izuna. His second brother turned to him in surprise when Madara walked into the ramen stand. Naruto turned pale and instantly buried his head in his half-empty bowl of ramen. Madara left him alone. Join us, Nisan, Izuna invited with a smile. Father wants you to accompany him to a meeting with the elders, Madara reported. Okay, let me take Nara home and dash. Madara shook his head. Now, and don't argue because you know you can't. Go, I'll take him home, Madara offered, and saw that Izuna was not comfortable with the idea, but when father said something, you did it without asking questions. Izuna nodded. Madara saw that Naruto also wanted to run away, but Izuna whispered something to him that made the boy nod. Before leaving, Taijima's second son turned to his eldest son. Try talking to him, Madara. He is our brother, Izuna suggested kindly. Izuna. Takashi died 2 days ago on a mission. I was only 6 years old, brother. What's your point? Madara asked sharply. Life is too short to regret, Nisan. Madara was stunned and froze even when his brother left. Izuna would sometimes say things like this that demonstrated his true intellect, regardless of his age. This made Taijima's eldest son look at his younger brother for a long time. With another sigh, Madara sat down next to the boy. Despite being just 3 years apart, Madara felt they were very different. They were so different. Still, he had to at least try for Izuna's sake. Did I hear you were injured during training? Asked Madara calmly. Yes, Nisan. Just a little bit. Madara shuddered as she heard the fear in the boy's voice. Had it terrified him so much? How's your training with Shuriken? Asked Madara, and this time the boy smiled. Very good. I can hit 3 goals right in the center at once, Naruto replied excitedly. Madara smiled slightly. Perhaps his brother had some hope, after all. Would you like to show me when we get home? I'm free for the rest of the day, Madara suggested. Aye. She could see that the boy was nervous and decided to relax him a little. If you prove what you say, I'll teach you a jutsu. Madara paled at the sight of the hungry look that was drawn in Naruto's excited eyes. He wanted to learn from his older brother, whom everyone called a prodigy, and he had longed for it so much that Madara was saddened. I will. So you'll teach me a cool jutsu? The boy asked. Yes. Before he could say anything, Naruto threw the food money that Izuna had left on the counter and ran off. Madara banged his head on the table. How could he forget that the little rascal liked to run at the slightest opportunity? He ran after his brother. Madara was impressed. He never imagined that his younger brother would have such an ability. Naruto had always had difficulty with ninjutsu, something embarrassing for an Uchiha, but the boy possessed another dangerous ability. He was an expert in kenjutsu. The way he held his goal, his firm but flexible stance, his excellent speed, and the way he made his gun dance in the air. The fact that he forced Madara to really put in the fight was a testament to his ability. His younger brother took 3 shurikens out of his bag and threw them at Madara. The eldest easily deflected the attacks and saw how his brother took advantage of the precious second to get closer. Madara expected a quick attack, but what happened next surprised him even more. His brother tried to sweep his legs. Madara quickly jumped up and lowered his goal, causing a high-pitched sound as Naruto stopped him with his own goal. Madara threw a kick to his opponent's chest, which the boy dodged at the last second. He had no respite, as Madara unleashed a dozen shurikens on him. Naruto, in turn, took their similar weapons, jumped into the air, and counterattacked, causing each shuriken to collide with his brother's. Spinning in the air, he aimed a pointed cut down with his goal towards a surprised Madara, only to receive a reverse kick that sent him to the ground spitting blood. He tried to stand up again to show his brother that he wasn't done yet, but his chest hurt. You did it right. Naruto smiled at the unusual praise he received from his older brother. He even helped him recover and kept his promise by showing him a jutsu that complemented his abilities. You're good with guns. Your accuracy is good, so let me show you how to make your shuriken attack more lethal and longer range, Madara explained. Naruto nodded obediently. Madara showed him the hand seals, a set of 3 signs that Naruto quickly learned. Madara then instructed him on the amount of chakra he should use to make his attack more lethal. All of Taijima's children had already been taught chakra control exercises in the hope of turning them into true warriors at an early age. And now it was proving useful. Naruto released his unique shuriken and then performed the hand seals that Madara had taught him, infusing chakra. He was surprised when his 1 shuriken turned into 7 more replicas and hit more targets. Good. Make your hand signals faster. On the battlefield, a delay of even a second could cost you your life, Madara warned. Yes, Nisan. Madara nodded and turned to walk away now that his job was done when Naruto's words shocked him. You care about me. If it weren't for his self-control, Madara didn't know what he would have done upon hearing those words, so he chose a standard response. You're my brother. As your older brother, it is my duty to protect you. Naruto smiled happily at him. Madara didn't understand why this boy was so happy. He had only made for him a simple jutsu that anyone else could have done just as well. But Naruto's smile became evident when he received a mountain full of gold. The boy was strange. He was distracted from his thoughts when he saw Izuna enter the compound and head furiously towards his room. He looked furious. Naruto, go and rest a little in your room, Madara ordered. But dash. Now. The boy snorted, earning a raised eyebrow from Madara. 2 seconds later, Naruto instantly rushed to his room, earning a faint smile from Madara. Perhaps Izuna was not so wrong with him. Even so, he decided to let Izuna get angry. When his second brother got angry, it was best to leave him alone, and Madara had a feeling who could have angered him. But he couldn't help but wonder why Izuna was so angry. 1 week later, Madara found his answer while on the battlefield alongside a large number of his clan members and all his siblings. Taijima stood at the head of the force of 300 Uchiha, ready to face his sworn enemies. In front of him stretched the Great Tama River, a key strategic water source that formed the livelihood of several nearby villages. A fountain that had been controlled by the Senju for more than a century and would soon be in the possession of the Uchiha. The loss of this river would greatly damage the interests of the Senju and ensure a key victory for the Uchiha that would allow them to secure more contracts from the wealthy feudal lords who had recently been flocking to the Senju. He stared at his sons, all of whom were ready to participate in the battle. Madara was as calm and ready as ever. Yashiro and Inabi were eager to fight to take down their house's sworn enemies. Izuna was furious. Taijima's second son, instead of staying by his father's side, found himself protecting his younger brother. Naruto's face was a mixture of apprehension, fear, and excitement. He was a 5-year-old boy, and it would normally be a few months before he joined his siblings in this never-ending conflict. But Taijima had seen Naruto's struggle with ninjutsu and doubted that his son would be able to learn fireball jutsu before his rite of passage came. If he failed, he would dishonor his family in the midst of his clan. So Taijima had brought him here in the hope that the green boy would see the dangers that awaited him and how he should make amends to be a better Uchiha like his brothers. If Naruto performed well, his clansmen would be able to ignore his lack of ninjutsu prowess, and if he died, he would at least die with honor and a bit in his hand. He would be a true Uchiha. Izuna was furious with him and argued daily to revoke his decision, but Taijima had made up his mind. His youngest son would become a true Uchiha or die as such on this battlefield. Naruto, the nervous boy who had been biting his lip in silent anticipation, looked at his favorite brother and saw him smile reassuringly. Poke them with the pointed end. Naruto smiled and nodded as he firmly gripped his short goal with his small hands. Soon he heard the war horns sounding across the river and saw movement in the forest. Moments later, an army of armored warriors pounced on him with their swords and weapons. The Uchiha responded to their war cries with equal fervor. As they charged, Naruto stood by Izuna's side and noticed that although the enemy was wearing armor, the men of his clan did not have that protection. Instead, the Uchiha wore their war clothes and threw themselves into battle. For some reason, Naruto found it strange and stupid. He was mesmerized when a black rain rose into the sky and he noticed that it was a shower of kunai and shuriken descending on his side. The Uchiha deflected incoming attacks with ease, but some were not fast enough to counter the massive storm raining down from the sky and fell as blood gushed from their mangled bodies. Naruto watched in horror as his older brother Inabi fell to the ground, clutching his throat where a sharp kunai lay buried. He stood motionless, waiting for his evil elder brother to get up, but Inabi remained still even as a pool of red blood began to form around his corpse. His brother was dead. The battlefield was in chaos, with the sound of guns clashing, men screaming, and unleashed jutsu filling the air. Men and women fought each other, trying to kill each other with the greatest cruelty and ferocity possible. Naruto watched Yashiro cry in pain as he watched his twin brother die. The older Uchiha roared fiercely and jumped to stab a teenage Senju in the belly. Yashiro howled and attacked two more Senju, shocked by the attack, brutally slashing them to death before 3 swords pierced his torso. Yashiro smiled faintly as he dropped a kunai from his bag. There was an explosion that tore Yashiro apart along with the men who killed him. Naruto froze watching his second brother die as blood and viscera fell on him. Anger. It swept through his body like a tidal wave as he grabbed his goal and ran toward the nearest Senju. Ignoring the armored chest, Naruto brutally struck him on the knees, causing a torrent of blood along with the enemy's scream as he fell to the ground. The last thing he saw was Naruto's goal buried in his brain. Naruto had to deflect a dozen shurikens that intended to kill him. In his thirst for blood, he charged forward, trampling corpses and shedding viscera. The Senju woman blinked as he jumped into the air and tried to raise his weapon, but not fast enough, as Naruto brutally slit her throat. He cut and slashed. He ran, he fell. He stabbed, he stopped. His mind was stunned as he continued to kill isolated Senju warriors with the help of his clansmen, never showing them a shred of mercy. Yashiro and Inabi were always mean to him, but they were his brothers. And these bad men killed them. He turned around when he felt an imminent attack and managed to stop a goal that cut off his head. Eventually, she recovered from her anger and realized that she was a young woman. She had blonde hair that barely reached her shoulders and bright green eyes full of anger and fear. His small body was covered by heavy Senju armor, and he was the same age as him. Naruto roared in anger, which made her shudder, and he took advantage of that moment to disarm her, followed by a brutal kick that sent her to the ground. Covered in blood and guts, his eyes lit up with righteous fury and the goal soaked in the red blood of his enemies. He charged at his new enemy to end his life. He roared as he raised his gun to stab her and interrupted because she was crying. Pure, crystalline tears ran down her plump blonde cheeks. His green eyes looked at him with fear and supplication. His hands trembled when he saw her crying, a girl his own age, and he wanted to kill her. But then he noticed the Senju emblem on his armor and remembered that his clansmen had killed 2 of his brothers minutes before. Tsunade. He looked up and saw 4 angry young men rushing toward him. There was a murderous desire in his eyes as he saw Naruto's goal floating above the girl. With an angry growl, Naruto faced those 4 head-on, ignoring the defeated girl. The first to find him was an older boy, with silver hair and cold eyes, who made Naruto tremble by clashing their swords. He was stronger and pushed Naruto away as the other boys approached to kill him. Naruto's eyes widened, knowing that he would not be able to evade him. He would die just like Yashiro. Until there was a wild blast of air as a shadow leaped between the swords of the Senju that struggled to move away. "You will not kill my brother, Senju," Izuna shouted furiously. Naruto smiled in relief as his brother kicked the silver-haired boy pushing him. The Senju narrowed their eyes as they watched the new enemy, as Izuna glanced quickly at his brother. "Stay behind me, Naru." The boy nodded and stood behind his older brother. Izuna brandished his sword as the Senju boys surrounded them. It was the silver-haired boy who attacked again, with Izuna confronting him. Naruto blocked the swords of the other 2 boys, one with half-black and half-white hair, and the other with brown hair. With all his strength, Naruto pushed the 2 Senju away, causing them to stumble a little. Suddenly, another senior Uchiha rushed into battle and stabbed the brown-haired Senju in the neck from behind. Kawarama. The Senju collapsed to the ground as his oldest comrade, a 10-year-old boy with jet-black hair, stabbed the elder Uchiha in the chest with an anguished cry. The sudden death surprised fighters on both sides, including Izuna. Blood flew through the air as the silver-haired Senju snatched Izuna's sword and stabbed him in the chest. Naruto cried for his brother, who growled and punched his attacker, causing him to stagger. The mixed-haired Senju boy tried to attack Izuna again only to receive a quick blow to his eye that sent him crashing, screaming in pain. Naruto ran towards his brother, managing to catch him in his small arms as they both fell to the ground. "Izuna." The Senju were already floating near their dead comrade, and the wounded man who had just lost an eye courtesy of Izuna's sword. Izuna coughed up blood and carefully pressed her trembling hand to her chest, only to see her return drenched in blood. His blood. Izuna, shouted Naruto. Taijima's second son looked vaguely at his brother, who was crying hysterically. Izuna coughed, but managed to smile and placed her bloody hand on her dear brother's cheek. Everything was getting so dark, the noises of battle were fading away, and only his brother's screams filled Izuna's ears. He looked at the boy he had loved more than anything in his life and smiled. I know, happy little brother. Naruto froze as his brother's hand fell from his cheek, his chest stood still, and his eyes closed with that smile permanently etched on his face. Izuna, Nisan, get up, please now? I'll go out of the walls. Will that witch say? Please, he shouted, but Izuna did not answer. He shook his brother again and again, just to gain silence. Naruto let out a cry of anguish and buried his head in his brother's bloody chest. Her loud sobs made her little body tremble, and the noises of battle died away. She cried so hard that she screamed, but Izuna never answered. No. He looked up hesitantly, his face bloodied, and saw Madara a few feet away, an expression of horror etched on his bloodied face. Taijima's eldest son roared as a surge of chakra was unleashed from his body, bringing all nearby warriors to their knees. The anger in Madara's eyes was enormous as he charged and cut the nearest Senju in half. The younger Senju who had attacked Naruto began to fall back, taking their dead and wounded comrades even further. Naruto saw that dozens of senior Senju had set their sights on Madara and the threat he posed, and they charged towards him. With a strength he never thought he had, Naruto got up and charged towards his last brother. He was not as strong as his brothers, but he was faster. He demonstrated a skill in passing by older warriors, mercilessly severing their legs with his goal. Madara unleashed carnage on the battlefield, killing everything and anyone who crossed his path with his sword, large fireballs, and shuriken jutsu. Naruto protected his furious brother's rear with the help of other Uchiha who joined the carnage with righteous fury. To Madara. The Uchiha joined in that battle cry, with Naruto leading the new charge, following his older brother's lead. It was as if a tidal wave had broken out, annihilating row after row of Senju warriors. Madara's fury knew no bounds, and no shinobi could stand against him. Those who tried to do so lost their lives instantly. Naruto didn't know how long he fought, how many he killed, or how many of his own clan members were killed in the attack. I was so angry and hurt. Another horn sounded on the battlefield, and seconds later the Senju began to flee deep into the forests from which they came. Run, tree huggers, shouted an Uchiha. Victoria. Fire and blood. Naruto collapsed to the ground gracelessly and remained motionless. He felt pain in his left arm and left cheek. But he didn't care, because Izuna was dead. Yashiro and Inabi too. His brothers. Many Uchiha crowded around him and lifted him on their shoulders, calling him hero, the young dragon, the brave. However, they had to break through as Madara returned to the charge with despair reflected in his eyes. His gaze finally fixed on his younger brother and last alive, and he rushed towards them. Naruto was still numb when he felt himself being lowered to the ground moments before a strong pair of arms grabbed him in a fierce embrace. He slowly looked up and saw that it was Madara, with tears in his eyes. Whatever differences the two brothers had in life were drowned in the pain they felt at the time. Naruto collapsed in Madara's arms and cried as his brother hugged him. It was at this scene that Taijima Uchiha arrived and saw the expressions of amazement on the faces of her clan members. Her own eyes widened as she saw her eldest son and youngest son hugging each other fiercely as they cried tears of sadness. Impossible, Taijima whispered as he looked into his children's eyes. They were red with tomes. The Sharingan was reborn. Madara walked silently with the rest of his clan as he saw the gates of his hometown approaching. The Uchiha were in a very good mood after achieving their greatest victory in a decade, and, above all, after witnessing the rebirth of their famous lineage. That had been the only reason that outweighed the losses they suffered. They could have achieved victory, but the price was too high. Madara had gone into battle with 300 men of his clan and 4 of his brothers. Now he was returning with less than half of that army and the bodies of his 3 dear younger brothers. His only consolation was that he had not lost all his brothers. His younger brother was still in this world, and that gave Madara the strength to fight and protect him. He and Naruto had never been best friends, but after losing what they had, Madara couldn't help but worry about the little boy. It was all Madara had left, apart from his power-hungry father, who was unfazed by the corpses of 3 of his sons. They died with honor, and their sacrifice returned the Sharingan to us. There's no need to shed tears, guys. Madara couldn't help but sigh with satisfaction at seeing her father with a black eye thanks to Naruto. The boy, who had acted with such humility and submission all his life, was furious to hear his father say something like that when Izuna's corpse hadn't even cooled down. He jumped before Madara could stop him. Not even Taijima had anticipated such a move until Naruto proved that he was the dragon's blood, and Taijima infuriated him. Taijima didn't take the insult kindly and tried to hit back at her son, only to be paralyzed by the hatred and anger in those little Sharingan eyes. That hesitation gave Madara time to pull his brother aside and apologize on his behalf. The young dragon. Madara watched his brother, who walked silently beside him, carrying the jar containing the ashes of his 3 brothers. The boy was so silent, with a vacant gaze, a permanent melancholy etched on his young face. Madara had only seen the corpses of his brothers, but Naruto was the one who saw them die one after another before his eyes. Izuna's death had broken something inside him, and yet it had also ignited something dangerous. The roars and cheers of the waiting crowd drove him out of his thoughts. Despite what she had suffered last week, Madara couldn't help but feel a great relief to see her home and her people. Taijima nodded to the cheers and began to deliver a rather promising speech about many more victories against the Senju. And when he introduced the rebirth of the Sharingan between his 2 sons, the entire clan was stunned. Madara was stunned to see the ovation that erupted after the announcement, which was even greater than that of his victory. Some clan members, both old and young, even wept when they realized that their beloved Sharingan had returned to their veins. It was a historic occasion, and his father enjoyed all that praise and glory, his dark eyes shining with even greater ambition. Then he pointed to his 2 children. My 2 sons gave us victory, and together they will help our house conquer the whole world. Today, before the gods, swear allegiance and service to Madara Uchiha, the invincible dragon, and Naruto Uchiha, the young dragon. The future of the Uchiha house. Madara's eyes widened as without hesitation, his entire clan knelt before him. Activating his Sharingan, he saw all his hopes and dreams with his new eyes. They trusted him to regain lost glory and obtain justice. And it would not fail them. He looked at his father and saw that the man was watching him with absolute pride and confidence. Madara remembered watching her brothers and members of her clan die at the hands of those bastards of Sunjus and felt her anger and determination grow. I will bring fire and blood to the Sunjus, he roared, raising his sword in the air. The clan roared alongside him and praised him over and over again. It was time for her brother to step up, the baby of the family, the one who had always been ignored by the clan, but who was now the center of attention. But a look into Naruto's eyes showed Madara that his brother was different. His next words proved it. We lost nearly 150 of our own in this battle, including 3 of my brothers, Naruto said sadly, as Taijima felt his blood boiling. People will sing songs about his sacrifice, Taijima refused, and saw the disappointment in his son's eyes. Yes, but my brothers and our dead warriors will never listen to them. That shocked all the members of his clan as they contemplated the numerous jars containing the ashes of their fallen. The emotion died down when he understood the price that was paid. And Naruto stepped forward. We fight without strategy like wild animals. We fight without armor, believing in our superiority. We are powerful warriors, but also men. We bleed and die like the Senju. If it wasn't for the sacrifice of my brothers and Madara's courage, we would have lost, Naruto explained sincerely, much to the great surprise, horror, and bitterness that emerged in his people. "Enough is enough, boy," Taijima growled. He fell completely silent as Naruto activated his two-tomo Sharingan and glared at him. The boy quickly turned to his people, who had just received a strong reality check that destroyed all the plans that Taijima had drawn up for the near future. "A single victory does not make us winners. This war is far from over, and if we are to defeat the Senju, we must fight smarter, we must outsmart them, both on the battlefield and off it. We are Uchiha, the strongest and noblest house in this world. We are the blood of the dragon, and together we will regain all that we have lost, but only if we fight together, only if we learn from our mistakes," the boy shouted like the dragon he was. A stunned silence reigned as Naruto unleashed his goal to lift it into the air. The determination and courage in those Sharingan eyes attracted the attention of the entire clan, much to the surprise of Taijima and Madara. "Are you with me?" Madara feared that his brother had told too many truths that his people were not prepared to hear. But he was wrong to notice movement among the warriors who had fought on the battlefield. Madara recognized the three boys who were the first to kneel, followed by several dozen more. "Naruto-sama tells the truth, and I believe him. My sword is at your command, now and always," Shursui Uchiha promised, earning a nod from the shocked young man who was not expecting any support. "I promise you my life, young dragon," Itachi Uchiha promised. The last boy raised his sword, causing the rest of the clan to quickly follow. "The young dragon," shouted Kagami Uchiha. Naruto stood motionless watching his people, who pledged loyalty to him without hesitation. Taijima was furious, but it was Madara who opened his eyes wide when he saw a glimpse of something in his younger brother. Izuna. His younger brother was not weak, for he had inherited Izuna's will. And as the eldest, Madara had to protect him, as Naruto was his younger and only brother from that day on. With a smile, Madara joined his people in supporting his brother for the first time in his life. Taijima watched her young son, alone and standing by the lake. He was very different from the inspirational leader who had begun to win the support of his people. Madara was beginning to gain popularity among the older generation, but Naruto had also gained a good following among the young, with the heirs of three powerful Uchiha families giving their lives to him. Naruto was different. He had always been since he learned to speak. "That boy. It's something else, isn't it?" asked a soft voice. Taijima turned to look at her only brother who still lived in this world. Naori was still as beautiful as ever, with long, billowing purple hair that reached her waist. Her skin was lighter than Taijima's, and her hourglass figure had made her a highly desired figure by many in her clan. However, he had not married despite having turned 19. He himself was only 26 years old, a fairly advanced age in his world, where few were over 30 due to constant wars. Her sister had inherited all of her mother's grace and beauty, while Taijima had followed in her father's footsteps to become the current leader of her house. Naori had been a fighter until she lost her only lover at the hands of the Sarutobi clan. This made her lose the will to fight, and she retired. But despite Taijima's concerns, he had proven to be very useful in managing the clan's administration. She was also the clan's representative among its few allies, and would often be absent for months to keep those alliances alive. And he only allowed himself to relax by her side. So when she put her hand on his arm and hugged him, Taijima didn't resist. Because only now, when it was only he and his sister, did he allow himself to remember his three deceased children. They had died as true shinobi, and he would make sure that their sacrifice was remembered by his people. "I'm sorry, brother," he whispered sadly. "Don't dishonor my children, Naori," Taijima warned, but his tone was neither harsh nor cold. "They were children, brother." He broke the embrace gently and looked at her closely. She should be married by now, giving birth to her next generation. But of course, her sister had always been a crazy woman, and only the death of her lover had robbed her of her passion. In that sense, he was not very different from Naruto, as they both did what they wanted. She touched his swollen eye and laughed as he told her that Naruto had hit him. Taijima's eyes twitched. "Do you think that's funny?" he growled irritably. "Only you can blame yourself, brother. Never provoke a dragon, much less an angry one." He rebuked him, looking at his nephew, who was meditating alone. Taijima sneered. He's young and dumb. She stared at him for a long time until finally he sighed and admitted another true fact. But he has a sharp mind. It's very irritating, but it's a real dragon. I never thought that my youngest son would awaken our precious gaze, and that gives me hope. But it's terrible with ninjutsu, Taijima said bitterly. She narrowed her eyes when her dear sister had that same amused twinkle in her eye. Bro, sometimes you can be pretty silly, he joked. Be careful, he warned her as she raised an eyebrow. Or what? Will you hurt me? Your only sister. Taijima gritted her teeth tightly, but said nothing more. Because he was right. Despite the flaws of their house, their only great quality was that they truly cared for their loved ones. This had often led to great madness and suffering, but it had also kept them stronger. The Senju were not the only ones who knew love for their kind. The Uchiha simply found it difficult to express such emotions due to their rigid customs and the harshness of their society. And this was even more evident to Taijima in her relationship with Naruto. Madara is your heir and the one to lead the clan in the future. But he will need his brother, now more than ever. However, the boys are different. You take Madara under your tutelage, and I will take Naruto under mine, he offered. No, they're my children, and I'll train them, he said firmly, but she simply pointed to the black eye her youngest son gave her. Young dragons are dangerous creatures, brother. You've done well to deal with Madara and the rest of your children, but Naruto is wild. He looks more like me, and the more you try to suppress him, the more he will rebel and burn everyone around him. It needs a different touch, she insisted as he growled. You'll only make it softer. The icy look he received from his sister made him regret his words. Much of her power came from the alliances and business relationships she maintained for her house, providing money, resources, and support that allowed them to fight against the Senju. Naori was gentle and kind, but ruthless to those who betrayed her, including his brother. I'm sorry, he said reluctantly. She gave him a relaxed smile that dispelled his bitterness. Naori never boasted of the power she had in her hands and was simply content to support him from the shadows, as long as he gave her the respect she deserved. They were completely different, but that didn't make him love her any less. Good. Take care of the boy. God knows I can't, he murmured, earning a brief laugh from her. I promise, brother. Madara found him sitting by the lake, even after the moon appeared in the cloudy sky. The boy tensed up as he felt the approaching presence, but relaxed a little when he saw that it was his older brother. She sat down next to the boy who still didn't say a word, and Madara put a lunchbox in his arms. Eat, he insisted. I'm not hungry, Naruto protested, and noticed a similar lunchbox on his elder brother's lap. Madara's eyebrows twitched at the challenge, but of course, he didn't expect anything else. His brother was stubborn, after all. Izuna would have known how to convince him, but he was gone. And now Madara was left with the responsibility of taking care of this child. Okay, then I won't eat either, he growled, and threw his lunchbox into the lake. Naruto's eyes widened comically as he gasped, which soon turned into an angry growl as he stared at his brother. An act that would have seemed strange to him just a few days ago, but they were no longer the same boys. Baka, Aniki, he spat, which only made Madara smile broadly as he lay on the wooden bridge. If you don't want to eat, that's fine, but I won't eat without you either. I don't care. Madara chuckled at Naruto's childish speech as he cursed him several times. It made him forget the pain of missing his dead brothers, and maybe Naruto felt the same way. Still, Naruto showed his stubbornness by not touching the lunchbox that Madara brought him. That was until his stomach growled. Strong. The boy's cheeks flushed as he looked away from Madara's smiling face. She ruffled her hair lovingly so that she would look back at him. Izuna, I said no dash. His voice died in his throat as he saw that it was Madara who was looking at him sadly. The two brothers were silent for a long time until Naruto opened the lunchbox and offered the refreshing food to Madara. The boy still didn't look Madara in the eye, but the gesture said it all. With a smile, Madara took the spoon and grabbed the rice. But instead of eating it himself, as Naruto wanted, he offered the food to the boy. Naruto stared back at him, but Madara didn't flinch. The smell of fresh food was too much for the little boy, who hadn't eaten anything since the morning, and finally took his first bite. They ate in silence. Madara helped Naruto eat, and he did the same. This gave him peace and allowed him to forget his own pain as he focused on his brother. But Naruto's next question surprised him. "Brother, is there a way to bring them back? A jutsu? A technique?" asked the hopeful boy, looking at his prodigal brother with such despair that it saddened Madara. "They're all gone, Naru. I'm sorry." He felt really bad that he had dashed the boy's hopes, but Madara knew it wasn't possible. His brothers were dead, their bodies reduced to ashes, as custom dictated. "I miss them," she whispered. "Even Inabi and Yashiro?" asked Madara curiously, knowing that the twins hadn't been kind to the boy. "Yes, they were my brothers, all of them." Madara's heart melted at the sound of those simple words, and he put down the lunchbox to one side to hug his younger brother and bring him closer. To his surprise, Naruto didn't give in and curled up next to Madara. "I miss them too, and I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," Madara said, now realizing she had erred in ignoring her little brother for so long. Naruto didn't say anything, which made Madara panic. "Just don't leave me." Madara held back her own tears as she hugged her little brother even tighter. "Never," he promised. However, even as he said that, a funny smile appeared on his lips, one that Naruto didn't fail to notice. "Stop getting depressed and worrying all the time, or I'll hit you in the head," Madara joked, only to receive a smile from her brother. "How are you going to hit me if you're fat and slow?" Madara blinked and looked at himself to see if he had put on weight, only to find that he was thin and fit. He also noticed that the weight of his brother, who was next to him, disappeared, followed by a small stone that hit his head. Madara's eyes twitched as he saw his little brother standing in the lake, laughing out loud at the joke he had played on his older brother. "Brado!" Naruto screamed as Madara roared and chased after him. He ran faster and faster, but Madara eventually jumped on him, causing them to lose control of the chakra, and both of them ended up crashing into the frozen lake. He swam back to the surface and breathed fresh air only to see Madara waiting for him. He swallowed hard. But his brother laughed. And Naruto laughed next to him, forgetting the pain in their respective hearts. Unbeknownst to both brothers, Naori and Taijima smiled from their position in the trees. The next day, Naruto was surprised to see her. He had only vague memories of his aunt in his short life. I remembered her floral scent and her kind eyes, how she told her stories at night, even if they were rare and told. He remembered crying for her when she left. Izuna had told him that one day he would return, but he had not believed it. And he had forgotten about her, which made him feel guilty. At least her smile was kind and welcoming as she gently cupped her cheek. "You've grown up quite a bit," he said. "Hello?" Naori frowned at his obedient answer. He wasn't the nephew I remembered, but of course, he'd been away for almost 2 years, and knowing Taijima, this guy would rarely have interacted with the opposite sex. He cursed his stiff brother again because his task had become even more difficult. It would have been better if this discomfort did not exist between them. "Ever since you have awakened your Sharingan, Taijima has seen fit for me to take charge of your training while he does the same for Madara," he said patiently, his face darkening. Oh, that was all he said, unable to hide the betrayal of his father ignoring him again in favor of his older brothers. But I shouldn't have expected anything else. Naori knelt down at his height and gently grabbed his cheeks, forcing him to look into her eyes. He found it hard to believe that he still retained so much goodness in spite of what he had seen. "He wanted to train them together, but I asked you for it," he said with a smile, as he opened his eyes wide, surprised and with a glimmer of hope. It pained her to see him cling to the small crumbs of love and care from his own family, but that only reaffirmed her determination to right this wrong. "Really, Obasan?" asked Naruto, and saw that she frowned at the term. He was 19 years old. "Yes, and you'll call me just Naori," he reported. "But—" She tapped him on the forehead, earning him a scream followed by a grimace that turned into a mischievous smile when she did the same with her pinky finger. Naori smiled, seeing his triumphant expression. Maybe her wild nephew was still alive there after all. "I'm glad you're back. I missed you, he said cheerfully. Me too. She hugged him, thinking that her own son would have had the same brown hair as him if Itami had lived. It pained her every day to think about her late lover and the family they had longed for. When they separated, she gave him a piece of paper that he looked at curiously. What is it? He asked. Taijima told me about your problems with fire ninjutsu. He shrank and looked away in embarrassment, but she grabbed his hand and made him look at her. It is not necessary for everyone to have the same types of chakra. Not all Uchiha are masters of fire, he suggested, earning his frown. But I'm a dragon. She laughed kindly at his silly comment. His clan's obsession with proclaiming themselves descendants of that mythical creature that may or may not have existed was very strong. Well, little dragon, then I would like you to pour your chakra into the paper, he instructed. Why? He swallowed hard as his eyebrows moved in annoyance, but unlike his older twin brothers, she didn't hit him on the head. Do it, please. You'll be surprised. Good. Hesitantly, he poured a bit of his chakra into the strange paper, visibly worried and excited by the result. He frowned as half of the paper became wet and the other half wrinkled. Looking at her aunt, she saw her quite surprised. What does it mean? He asked curiously. It means you're a water and lightning type user. You can still use the other 3 chakra types in their jutsus, but it will be challenging. But water and lightning are your forte, something you can really master, he explained. But shouldn't an Uchiha be a fire user? Asked Naruto, frowning. If we all used fire, it would be easy for the enemy to defeat us. We need diversity in our ranks and in the attacks. Madara is an exceptional user of fire and wind. With this, you can complement your brother on the battlefield and protect him. Naori saw that his careful explanation shocked him, and his brow dissipated. He still wanted to master fire, but linking his ability over water and lightning with that of protecting his elder brother had made him more receptive to their different power. What type are you? Fire and lightning. But I also know good water jutsu, but mastering them will be your job. But I don't see why with your Sharingan you could have such a difficulty. Then let's get to work. Naori blinked as she screamed excitedly before running to the lake to begin her training. OMG, the guy was hyperactive, but that could also be beneficial for his training. What I also wanted to tell him was that in addition to his combat training, he would also take charge of his teaching in clan politics and the art of diplomacy, something that Taijima could not teach her children even in 1,000 years. Madara didn't have the patience or tact for soft skills. He was more of a warrior. But Naruto had a gift with words, and this ability, if properly developed, could be beneficial to his clan in the future. Madara would be the next leader of his clan, but if the Uchiha were to win, they would need their diplomatic and reasonable brother to gather new allies and also bring the lost back to their side. It was the only way they could weaken and defeat the Senju. With those thoughts in mind, Naori walked towards her nephew in whom she could see his successor. Naori watched in surprise as her nephew followed his hand stamps perfectly, without making a single mistake. His dark red eyes watched his movements intently and captured them masterfully. He had heard stories about the Sharingan and its power, but now he saw it in person. He threw a small water dragon at him, and he replicated his action by throwing a smaller version of his own water dragon. The two beasts clashed fiercely, but their power over the water triumphed and their beast was defeated. Even so, she gave him no respite and threw herself directly at him. Their swords clashed then, and she exerted all her strength, but he parried her blows with ease. He did not try to overwhelm her, as it was useless given his superiority, but his speed was dangerous. He knew he was smaller and used it to his advantage, targeting his legs and even his sexual organ. Relentless. Suddenly, he lunged at her legs, making her jump into the air by reflex. It was then that she made the mistake of looking him in the eye. She froze. The next second, a sword pointed at his heart, and his triumphant smile was clearly visible on his face. I win. Is that so? He froze as he heard her voice echo behind him, and a sharp sword pointed at his neck. The Naori in front of him vanished into smoke. Shadow clone. Damn, he cursed, earning a blow to the head. You did well, but you lack experience. Don't get cocky just because you have the Sharingan. Because your enemy will always have their own traps. And always make sure to decapitate an enemy at the first opportunity. Limbs and organs can be lost, but they cannot stop a warrior. But losing his head would be the end of it, he warned, removing the kunai from his neck. He turned and saw her soaking wet from head to toe. Her long purple hair was completely wet, and her dress was tight to her female figure. He blushed and looked away. Naori raised an eyebrow at her reaction even more when she turned around. "Naruto, what are you doing?" he asked seriously. "You? Well, it's not honorable," he stammered, making her smile. Who would have thought that the brat had decency, unlike most of the men in his clan? But his honor was his flaw, and he could kill him. "Have you seen a naked woman?" he asked, wondering what his brother had trained his children in. Kunoichi had been the death of many great warriors with his seduction. "No, it's disgusting." He couldn't contain his laughter when he heard his comment. What a child. One day he would regret having said something like that and say the opposite. Naori was sure, but that would be for another time. Even so, he couldn't resist the opportunity to tease him more. He was adorable. "Why do you think that?" I could feel his frown as he was pressed on this awkward topic. So he improved the deal. "Answer me, and I'll teach you something new," she offered, and he turned hesitantly. Their gaze was still fixed on the lake below them. The boy loved to learn more. "I know. No, your chest is strange and..." Inabi said. "What, no?" "You have dash." Crimson blushed, unable to finish his words despite his generous offer. Naori smiled, but patted her head gently. "It's okay. Maybe one day you'll change your mind. But always watch out for women, Naruto. They can give life, but they can also take it away. You are honorable in that aspect, and I want you to continue to be that way to prevent you from making mistakes," he warned. "Hi," he replied, not fully understanding its meaning, but deciding to follow his advice anyway. She saw the afternoon sun shining brightly along with the groan of her stomach as she scratched the back of her head. "Come, we'll have lunch," she offered, her eyes lit up. "Ramen." She hit her forehead at his unhealthy obsession. Izuna had indulged him too much in that regard. "No, fool. Something healthy that will allow you to grow big and strong like Madara. You want it, don't you?" he asked seriously, knowing that he always had to link his demands to his benefit or he would protest. Stubborn child. He sighed. "It's okay." "Good. Then we will have our academic lessons," he smiled. "What?" Midnight. Sneaking out of town had always been a fun activity for him. Managing to outwit the guards, who always boasted that no one could enter or leave without his permission, made him laugh. The only downside was that it worried Izuna, which is why he didn't do it more often. But his brother was gone, and Naruto was trying to revive. She enjoyed Madara's growing affection for her, and her aunt's return had begun to fill the void in her heart. Naori was kind to him, but quite strict with her training. She was bold and did not hesitate to make him uncomfortable with her body or her abhorrent love of books. He still shuddered as he remembered how he had spent the whole afternoon learning about the different ninja clans and their stories. Who led those clans, the names of their children, and what parts of the world they controlled. The information was too much for him, but Naori insisted that he learn it. When he argued that they had servants to remember that information, she gave him a blow so hard that it still hurt. He had gotten in line after that, and she rewarded his cooperation by taking him to eat ice cream with her. He ran through the vast forests, enjoying the cold air on his skin. The rustling of the leaves and the elusive running of the little animals made him laugh. This was the true meaning of freedom. Here in nature, I didn't have to pretend. He didn't have to watch his manners or choose every word carefully. He could say anything, do anything, and that gave him immense joy. His father didn't care where he was, and it wouldn't matter if he got home in the morning. Madara slept soundly and always in his chambers, so there was no chance that his brother would find out that he had disappeared from his home. Naori was busy doing some work, and he doubted she felt the need to see him so late at night. Izuna had been the only one who cared and made sure he was in his bed most of the time. Naruto stopped his run as he remembered his brother's last breath. No, happy little brother. Madara had warned him not to get too carried away by sadness, and being close to Naori helped. However, I also missed Izuna's smile, his ramen, and the long walks around the city. He missed the horseback rides that his brother always offered him, despite the grimaces they made him win over from the other members of the clan. He held back tears and ran fast, no matter where he stepped. Only if I had been faster, only if I had been stronger, his brothers would still be alive. Why had he been so weak? Break! He screamed in pain as the tree branch broke under his feet, knocking him down the small hill. He tried to grab on to stop the fall and felt terror take hold of his heart as the deep valley grew closer and closer. But there was nothing to hold on to, nothing to stop his descent into death, and his heart stopped when he felt the ground disappear beneath him. He closed his eyes, not wanting to see himself die in a horrible way. Everything was so dark and cold as it kept falling. He didn't know what took hold of him, but he opened his eyes only to see his life pass before his eyes. All the good and bad moments, the memories of his brothers, his victories and defeats, tears and joys. Perhaps I would see them again soon. However, all those thoughts vanished from his mind when in the darkness he saw something. He was distant, but getting bigger and bigger. His eyes widened in horror when he saw something that stopped his heart. The pair of deep red eyes full of hatred. He stared in shock at the deep red eyes that burned with so much hatred and rage. In that moment, he knew that his death would be far more horrific and painful than he originally imagined. However, as his final moments elapsed and he moved closer and closer to the ascending form hidden in the dark shadows that bubbled with a monstrous amount of negativity, something within him shattered. "You are the blood of the dragon." He remembered his father's words to his older brothers whenever they were faced with something impossible. Those words always excited Anabi and Yashiro, and made both Izuna and Madara bolder. But I had never understood the meaning behind those simple, silly words. However, when death crossed his path, it was those same simple and silly words that gave him strength. A dragon never gives up, a dragon never bows to anyone, a dragon fights and fights until it defeats its enemies. He pulled 2 sharp kunais from his bag and threw them toward the nearby rock walls, but not before tying ninja wire to them. For once, he appreciated Izuna's warnings to always be prepared, even if he was only going for a walk near his clan's borders. Connecting the weapons, he grabbed one end of the ropes, prompting him to fly straight into the nearby rock. When his feet touched the hard surface, he was ready and immediately channeled chakra that kept him firmly attached to the surface. He unleashed his goal just in time when the creature below him growled angrily, sending tremors through the dark valley. His eyes widened as a huge tail emerged from the shadows and pointed directly at him. Determined to survive, he ran across the rocky surface at speeds he never thought he would reach. Huge chunks of rock and debris flew over him as the tail tore apart where he stood. His enemy was more cunning than he realized, for he kept throwing more and more gigantic tails to smash his head, but he had always been faster than all his brothers. And despite his desire to see his dead brothers again, he now understood that Madara would be heartbroken if he died. His older brother wasn't bad, though he'd been distant all these years. Madara had shown him that she really cared about him, and now he wanted to meet his older and only brother alive, support him, protect him as Izuna had done. And for that one desire he would not give up. He would find a way to survive no matter who or what he had to face. Going back up was not possible because the creature was hell-bent on stopping that possibility, so that left him with only one option. As the ground approached his relief, he took a swift leap, narrowly avoiding being crushed to death by another tail. He immediately adopted his battle stance and activated his precious dojutsu, staring at the huge creature. And what he saw left him stunned and terrified. And it seemed that he wasn't the only one to experience those feelings, as the now-revealed beast shuddered as its terrifying red eyes saw its enemy. Those eyes. His voice was even deeper, and it echoed through the empty valley like a war cry. Despite the growing fear in his heart, Naruto grabbed his goal firmly, staring blankly at the huge 9-tailed fox in front of him. An Uchiha. If it were possible, the hatred and anger in the monster's eyes increased tenfold as he growled. "Are you going to attack me again?" the boy asked in a disconcertingly calm voice. The fox paused for a moment, watching the little dwarf, and was surprised to see that the brat had not tried to run away. Either he was a fool like most children, especially those from his insane clan, or he was bolder than Kurama had imagined. "You're not afraid." It was just a statement from the fox, but it didn't provoke any reaction in the stoic boy. When the monstrous animal glared at the insect in front of it, it was then that the boy spoke. "I'm a shinobi. I won't kill you if you let me go, but if you persist, I'll fight you," the boy replied fiercely. The beast laughed. "What makes you think that an idiot like you can even scratch me? I can crush you in an instant, brat," the fox sneered. "Maybe, but I will still fight with all my might." "Why?" asked the curious fox. "Because I don't want to die." The beast laughed again at the pitiful response expected of every human, but the boy's gaze puzzled him, for he did not explode with anger or frown. He stared at him with the same determination that woke him up. Most would have on themselves, defended themselves, or simply tried to flee. This little guy hadn't done any of that. "Die, either by my hands or by those of some other imbecile shinobi. Kids like you don't survive long in this world, and you still struggle." "Why?" the fox asked curiously, momentarily holding back his desire to crush the boy just to find the answer. It had been a long time since another foolish human had crossed his path or tried to attack him. "My brother would be sad if I died, and I don't want him to be sad again." "Never again," the boy replied calmly. The fox was silent, watching the boy with a look that little Uchiha couldn't comprehend. Just when he thought the beast was about to attack again, he spoke. "You're cursed enough to have been born into that demented cult you call Clan A. What's worse, you inherited these miserable eyes when I thought I'd never see this power again in my life. Do you think they'll make you powerful? These eyes have only brought misery and pain to their wearer. It would be a pity if I killed you here," said the fox frankly. The boy didn't say a word and only pointed his goal forward, which made the beast sneer. "Go away. I spare your life," the fox mocked. Naruto blinked in surprise, knowing that he had probably been given a unique chance, something this beast wouldn't have given anyone else. However, he didn't want to turn his back on the fox only to have him stab him in the back. The creature must have recognized the look that made it growl. "I won't show you mercy, you fool. Anyone who has used the Sharingan never met a good fate. They all die screaming in pain. The day will come when you will wish I killed you here," warned the fox. "We'll see about that," Naruto replied sharply. "Hell, what guts you have? Awesome for a fucking brat," said the funny fox. "I won't tell anyone about this meeting or the fact that you live here so close to our borders. You have my word," Naruto said honestly, putting his gun back into its holster. When he looked at the fox, if possible, he looked even more disappointed than before. "Not only do you belong to a clan of madmen, but you're even more foolish with that sense of loyalty and honor you have towards your clan. Does that make you feel better?" the fox growled, receiving an icy look from the boy. "Maybe my family is crazy, and so am I. But without my loyalty and honor, what difference is there between you and me? I will fight and die for my family, no matter how bad you say they are." "What are you fighting for?" asked Naruto harshly. The air around him became dense with hatred and rage as the fox stared at the ground, whistling fiercely. "Go away, before I decide to kill you." Naruto didn't need any more warnings as he jumped to the surface of the rock and instantly began to run towards the surface at high speed. And as he continued to flee, he lost sight of the fox staring at him as he disappeared with a frown. Silly child. He did not stop running even when he left the dark valley. His legs refused to stop as he sped through the trees. His heart shot out of his chest, and he sweated profusely as he remembered what he had found moments before. Most importantly, he had survived thanks to truly incredible luck. Because in no way could he have defeated that monster. Neither Madara, no other Uchiha, nor even his own father could defeat that beast. He had felt that infinite sea of vile chakra in that beast. He had felt its hatred, its anger, its desire to kill. Not even the entire Uchiha clan combined would be able to defeat that monster. That was the reason why he had promised not to tell anyone the location of the fox, so that no idiot would go out to try to enslave the monster only to end up killed. If things had been different, he would have been forced to fight the fox. and he would have died. There was no doubt about that. But strangely enough, the beast had spared his life and his words. What did he mean that the Uchiha were crazy? Sure, his family was too stuffy and arrogant, but they couldn't be crazy. He refused to believe it, whatever that stupid fox said. The Sharingan brings only pain and misery. All he had heard from each Uchiha was how great this power was, or how lucky Naruto was to awaken it. But if he could exchange these eyes for his dead brothers, Naruto would do so without hesitation, as the pain of losing them tormented him at every moment, regardless of the power these eyes bestowed upon him. It wasn't worth it. And when he realized that fact, he knew that there was some bitter truth in the fox's words. And there were a lot of things that Naruto didn't know about his dojutsu, his clan, or even what kind of dangerous monsters lurked in the real, dangerous world. For all these years, she had lived a protected and guarded life under Izuna's watch, but now that veil was falling very fast. He had already seen the barbarity and murder that humans were capable of inflicting on each other, the pain of losing loved ones before their very eyes, the power of hatred that could drive even the noblest or weakest man to momentary madness, the endless desire of men for ever more power and greater ambition. Finally, he stopped when he arrived at the clan settlement and secret passage he had created for himself over the years. His head was spinning with all those overwhelming thoughts, but if one thing was certain, it was that the Uchiha clan was his family. The strange but affectionate Madara was his brother, the attractive but strict Naori his aunt, and the ambitious, cold Taijima his father. Walking toward a nearby tree, the boy knelt down and placed the edge of his goal on the grass, his eyes burning brightly with determination. Izuna, Yashiro, Inabi. He wished to see even a ghostly reflection of his lost brethren, but all he saw was the empty bark of the tree in front of him. I will protect you all, no matter what. Taking a deep breath, he spoke the word on which he would live his life. I promise. The next morning, Naruto was quite surprised when he received the summons and had to hurriedly prepare not to be late because that man never tolerated any weakness or lethargy. That's why Naruto found himself wearing his best clan clothes and newly forged armor. He was fully armed to be ready for the daily training he would undoubtedly have with Naori afterwards, no matter the reason an Uchiha trained daily. When he met the man near the holy temple, the air around him turned icy as they both looked at each other. And then Taijima did something that Naruto never saw him do, at least with him. He smiled. But it was not a sign of joy or pride, but of even greater ambition and plans that were hidden in the man's eyes. Naori tells me you have potential, Taijima said candidly, getting straight to the point bluntly. Well, she's not blind, unlike few people I know, Naruto replied coldly, earning a raised eyebrow from his father. Do you hate me, boy? Naruto decided not to answer and settled for giving him a fierce look that made Taijima look at his clan's settlement located beneath the mountain on which the temple was located. You've always been funny, weird, and innocent. Believe it or not, I don't hate you, but I don't love you either. The 6-year-old boy had known it all his life, but hearing it in words was as if a sword brutally pierced his heart. And it hurt, but he didn't blink, he didn't cry, he didn't stare. He just stared. Why? He asked simply, without any accusation or expectation. Taijima's fists clenched, and for a moment Naruto saw the strange pain in those hard eyes, something the man never did even when his children died. You took away the only thing I ever wanted. You stole it from me, and nothing can fill the void it left. The sheer amount of anger and pain present in Taijima's eyes was enough to make her youngest son realize why things had turned out this way between them. Mother, Naruto said sadly. You look so much like her that every day it hurts to see you standing in front of me while she is still dead. They warned Hikari about problems with her pregnancy. I told her to have an abortion to protect her. But he chose to give you life, giving up his own. I loved her more than anything in this world, even my children. But why do you think she chose to die? Taijima asked harshly. Naruto had a hard time holding back his tears when he learned that his mother died for him. It hurt more than the contempt and ignorance of his family during all these years, because it justified the hatred that his brothers had shown him and the distance that his father maintained with him. Because he killed the only thing everyone loved. I don't know, he answered sadly. It's the surname that lasts. It's the only thing that matters. Not you, not your honor, not your beliefs. We all serve the clan and those above us. I want you to stop acting like a fool and become the man you're meant to be. Not tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Now, Taijima said seriously, looking her son straight in the eyes. If I do that, will things change between us? Asked Naruto, his voice barely above a whisper. Never. Naruto looked down at the ground, but stopped when a hand landed on his shoulder, making him look back at his father. But I can be proud of you. He saw nothing but pure honesty reflected in those black and dark eyes. This man would never love him, and yet. You are my son. You always have been, no matter what we both feel. I will do my duty to you, but I hope you will do yours too. To govern, he must sometimes do unpleasant things to his enemies and allies, but that also generates anger. I can govern well because Naori does things that I could not do. She keeps our clan fleeing from the shadows. You are the youngest son, and as such, it will be your duty to support Madara, who will succeed me, in the same way that Naori supports me now. That's your job. Do it with all your might, and you'll make me and this clan proud. Do you understand, Naruto? Taijima asked seriously. Naruto nodded, looking directly at his father. I will never love you, father. But Madara is my brother, the only brother I have left. And there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do for him, Naruto promised fiercely, earning a cold smile from the older man. You're an Uchiha, okay? But you will give me what I want. No questions asked, Naruto demanded. If it is in my power to give you, and if you do your duty well, then you will get everything you desire. I promise you, Taijima said honestly. After a final nod, Taijima watched as her son walked away proudly and upright. But he never saw the silent tears that fell from the young man's eyes. The days flew like the wind, the weeks passed in the blink of an eye, turning into long months. Meanwhile, Naori watched as the boy she adored changed before her very eyes. Where once innocence and joy shone, they were now replaced by a permanent, hard and gloomy gaze. He used to complain about reading and writing, but now he did what she asked him to do without question. He did what he was told without blinking. He did one thing and one thing only. He learned. I have never seen an Uchiha put so much passion into his training. He practiced day and night until he collapsed from exhaustion. It was as if something possessed him and drove him to keep going. Within 6 months, the once weak man now stood as one of the best water and lightning-style ninjutsu fighters. His jinjutsu had become even more dangerous with his Sharingan, and although his taijutsu was mediocre, unlike Madara, who was a monster in that arena, Naruto was the best swordsman Naori had seen in the entire new generation of Uchiha. He was swift as the wind and flexible as a snake, and when he attacked, he cut his enemies in half. Without hesitation, without fear, without mercy. He laughed, joked, smiled, but the light in his eyes had faded. And that broke his heart, because Naruto had been the only one who had shown him a new possibility that the Uchiha could take advantage of. It was different, but someone had irreversibly shattered his spirit. She had tried to talk to him, urged him to open up, but he always made silly excuses or said everything was fine. But it was not like that. He had confronted Taijima because his brother might be the only one capable of reducing Naruto to that state, but he only got a denial of Taijima's involvement in the matter. Naori knew it was a lie, but she had no proof and her brother was hard enough. However, things weren't so dark regardless. From time to time, he caught a glimpse of the real Naruto, the kind and gentle boy who surrounded Madara. She was happy to see that they got along better than ever. Despite his busy schedule as heir to the clan, Madara did his best to spend time with his brother. She corrected his mistakes and always encouraged him, something Naori could never do, much to his disappointment. And that was the only thing that gave him hope. She watched the boy sit next to her as they both watched the sun set in the sky. Are you afraid? Tomorrow is a great day for you, she said sweetly. I'm ready, he said, holding his new sword firmly in his right hand. He stiffened as a pair of soft but strong arms wrapped around his chest from behind, followed by a deeply pleasant scent that invaded his senses as Naori placed her face next to his cheek. Naori. He still felt strange calling his aunt by her name, knowing that it was not appropriate or respectful. But she had insisted to the point of hitting him on the head every time he didn't. "Are you okay?" she asked worriedly. "I'm fine." He grimaced as she pinched his cheek quite hard, which made him stare at her, but softened at the look in her eyes. "What am I to you, Ori?" he asked, staring anywhere but into her eyes, fearful of her answer. "You are my nephew, my student, my friend." "Why do you ask me that?" he asked with a frown. "Please don't lie to me. Just tell me what you really want from me. You didn't spend all these months training me for anything. I'm the youngest son, a spare. Someone important like you would never bother with someone like me unless they want something," she said sincerely. The slap that hit his cheek sent tremors all over his body, and when he looked at it, Naruto couldn't help but shudder at the sight of the raw fury and pain in his eyes. "How dare you say that?" he hissed furiously. "Nothing is free in this world, Naori. Everyone always wants something, whether it's my father, the clan, or you. No one cared about me all these years, but now that I have the Sharingan and 3 of my brothers have died, suddenly everyone starts to take an interest in me. They just want my power and what I can do for them, maybe except for Madara. So, please, tell me what you want," she asked, unable to hide her sadness. He looked at this boy with his eyes wide, unable to hide his surprise and pain at hearing him say such cruel things. What hurt him even more was that almost everything was true. "Naruto, you are my family. I don't need anything from you," she whispered and shuddered when he glared at her. "You abandoned me." The vague memory of a 3-year-old boy with tears in his eyes haunted her. Even after all these years, he had never forgotten the pain in those young eyes, nor the image of that child crying himself to exhaustion in Izuna's arms as she walked away from their lives to fulfill her duty to her clan. It had been the right thing to do, the work needed to keep the Uchiha still in the power game, but he never thought of the damage it would cause to that boy. She thought he was young and would forget her, but he never did. "The only thing I had in this world was you and Izuna. Then you just walked away, not looking back. You never loved me, did you? But it's okay. I killed my own mother and my brother, so it's okay." "But why does it still hurt?" she asked painfully, clutching her heart with her small hands. "What?" Naori looked at him in horror and tears, her eyes filled with tears as she let go of his embrace and stared at the lake with melancholy always present in her eyes. The next moment, a shadow fell next to the young man, startling them both, and before they could blink, a loud blow connected with Naruto's head, making him shudder as he stared at his older brother's hard gaze. "You got me, you little fool," Madara said fiercely, but frowned when Naruto laughed cynically. "How far would you go for me? Izuna always fought for me no matter whom." "You can't do that," Naruto replied harshly. "What if I do?" asked Madara sternly, all joy having disappeared from his eyes. "Even against our father? Even against our clan? Against the whole world?" Naruto's eyes widened when Madara didn't blink or flinch for a second. His elder brother simply stared him in the eye. "I will burn the whole world if it makes you happy and keeps you safe," Madara promised. "Why?" Naruto asked sadly, with tears in his young eyes. Strong arms wrapped around his smaller body, pulling him into what was the fiercest embrace of his life. He felt like he was being crushed, but curiously, that only served to ease his pain as Madara whispered in his ear. "Because I can't do this without you. You are my younger brother, my last brother. If I lose you too, I'll have nothing left to fight for. And no matter what, little brother, I'll protect you. From our enemies, from our own clan, and even from my father. Anyone who threatens you will have to go through me first, and I will kill them all." Naruto looked in shock at those Sharingan eyes as Madara looked at him with such affection that he warmed his own cold heart. "Do you promise?" he asked hesitantly. "Do you want me to swear an oath with my little finger?" Madara asked with a mocking smile. Naruto laughed, just imagining Madara doing something like that. However, Madara gave him another blow to the head and interrupted him. "But if you keep getting depressed like this, I'll kill you myself," Madara warned. "Hello, Papa Bear." Madara's eyebrows twitched violently, and he cursed loudly as Naruto shot out of his arms to the other side of the lake with a mischievous smile on his face. Naori blushed furiously as Madara shamelessly took off his pants and ran after Naruto, screaming a series of curses while spraying his special water right behind his now terrified brother, who also started shouting a series of unique curses as he tried his best not to soak in the shower that Madara threatened to unleash on him. All the while, Madara continued to laugh maniacally. He couldn't help but realize the fact that Taijima had destroyed his own family, but fate hadn't been totally cruel, as he saw hope not only for Naruto, but for his entire clan and these two boys. Together they could do anything in this world. And maybe it was time for her to make amends for her own past mistakes and appreciate the one thing that really mattered in this world: family. He was lucky enough to still have one in this cursed world of endless war. But those compensations would have to wait, as she settled for watching her funny nephews argue with each other. However, he hadn't overlooked the lingering darkness in both of them. Even more so, in Madara's case, if the promise he had just made was an indication. That boy was far more powerful than any of his generation or the several that came before him. Someday, he might be powerful enough to defeat the Senju. But in those powerful eyes, he had also seen a great weakness. Madara loved too much, and he really cared about his younger and last brother. Naori could only pray that these two boys would not lose each other, because the madness that would follow such a calamity would destroy both the Uchiha and the world. The next day, the fateful day had arrived, probably the most important in the life of every Uchiha that ever lived. Because today it would be decided if they were part of the group or if they were passive ones that should be put aside. It was the day of Naruto's trial. The young man stood near the lake, fully armed and ready, with a determined look. Almost the entire clan had gathered to witness his rite of passage. For not only was he a possible future leader of the clan if Madara or Taijima died, but he also possessed the famous Sharingan. And for many who hadn't witnessed that sacred power in battle before, this was a golden opportunity. The conflict had eased considerably following their crucial victory over the Senju 6 months earlier, and both great clans took a step back, resulting in a strange momentary peace. Madara continued to go out on small missions, but only with a small squad, leaving the rest of the clan to starve to see the Sharingan in battle. And now her wish would be granted, but Naori knew that she had only added to Naruto's troubles. While he would have to face a younger, established, and recognized member of his clan, coming of age similar in combat, to defeat him or at least show a fight worthy enough to be considered strong, that would make Naruto a true Uchiha and an adult despite being only 6 years old. It was a daunting task for any child, but Naruto stood his ground because Madara was fiercely watching him. The presence of his older brother had silenced the whispers and taunts that the crowd used to hurl at the fighters. But everyone's eyes widened when a fully armed Taijima was the one who started walking towards Naruto. "Father, what does this mean?" asked Madara furiously. "I will be your opponent," Taijima declared, prompting gasps from members of his clan as they began to murmur furiously from the crowd. "That's unfair and against the rules, father. Choose someone his own age, as required by law," Madara argued, enraged by the injustice he was about to inflict on his younger brother. Taijima glared at him. "I set the rules, boy, and you will obey me." Taijima and the entire clan shuddered when in the blink of an eye there was a sword placed around the clan chief's neck by none other than Madara himself, who had pure murder flashing in his eyes. "I have long seen you inflict injustice against him. Not anymore," Madara promised. "Idiot, don't you see that I do this for you? I'll put on a good show to make sure it passes, but I'll also show that it's not as strong as you. The clan cannot be divided between two brothers. Only you will lead the clan, not him," Taijima hissed angrily. "Naruto will never betray me, nor has he ever wished he could," Madara said confidently, looking directly into his father's cold eyes. "Silly boy, maybe your brother doesn't want that, but if he proves his strength today, his followers will grow day by day. There are already many in the clan who look up to him, and one day they will pressure Naruto to overthrow you, if only to satisfy their own goals. That kind of rivalry will tear the clan apart, and I won't allow it. I know the power game better than you do. So adjust. This is my last warning, Taijima said coldly, ready to whip the boy if he persisted. But Madara did not give up, and his Sharingan was activated. Naori was already moving towards her brother and nephew to stop the conflict as the crowd became increasingly fascinated by the show. I'll fight him. To everyone's surprise and Madara's horror, it was Naruto who said that by untying his sword and pointing it at his father. Naruto dash. This is my fight, Nisan. Believe in me, he asked, gratefully looking at his perplexed older brother. To Taijima's surprise, Madara lowered his sword but did not move away without warning. If you do him injustice, then consider that my support for you is gone. Taijima was about to discipline the insolent boy, but Naori's pleading gaze and the gazes of the entire clan stopped him. Naruto was already corrupting the obedient and loyal Madara, and he couldn't allow it. With fury burning in his eyes, Taijima walked towards the battle arena as he and his son took up positions on the other side of the lake. Try not to dishonor our family, Taijima warned, and became even more irritated when Naruto smiled. The same could be said of you, old man. This insolent brat. Without warning, Taijima attacked. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. A huge and furious fireball was unleashed by Patriarch Uchiha, sending it straight to his young son, burning water in its path and causing steam to rise. Madara held his breath as Naruto simply advanced his sword, making it glow with chakra. The eldest brother saw Naori smile proudly. The next moment Naruto disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Shunshin. Madara's eyes widened as through his Sharingan, he saw Naruto literally slash the fireball in half with his sword and disappear from the flaming aura with such speed that it left Taijima speechless. And it wasn't over. With the Sharingan lit, the boy wove an intricate set of hand seals with his hands at lightning speed. Sushin, Suryuden no Jutsu, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. Two large water-roaring dragons with hateful yellow eyes emerged from the lake and charged directly towards Taijima, much to the concern of the surprised clan chief. But the experience came when at the last moment Taijima made a seal with his hand, replacing himself with a nearby log that was available near the shore, just in time when the water dragons broke through his position. Naruto turned back and brought his sword forward to crash into his father's steel as the man appeared behind him with a swift shunshin. And Taijima made his first mistake. For a brief second, he stared hatefully directly into Naruto's eyes that were now burning with an active Sharingan. The spectators of the clan gasped as Taijima froze when Naruto disarmed him, and then quickly decapitated him so that he turned to smoke. Shadow Clone. Even without Sharingan, the Uchiha maintained their world dominance thanks to their skill in the ninja arts. One of their greatest virtues was their great skill with ninjutsu, which allowed them to develop numerous powerful techniques. The Shadow Clone was one of them. Only a few members of their clan could perform this forbidden jutsu, and even they could do so with some limitation. But Naruto's family had always trained the strongest warriors in his clan. That is why they were the leaders, and the others followed them. And while Taijima didn't have the Sharingan, that didn't diminish the fact that he was a powerful and dangerous shinobi. Naruto turned around and saw the real Taijima waiting for him with a proud smile on his face. The son prepared himself while his father raised 2 fingers, making 4 Mizu Bunshin emerge from the lake, all armed and with the same bloodthirsty smile, with the intention of putting their enemy in his place. And then the clones attacked. Naruto counterattacked. Madara barely gnashed his teeth as he watched his father use so much power against Naruto, but surprisingly the young man held on. Pretty good, in fact, if the admirable and proud looks of his clanmates proved it. Still, that didn't make the elder brother any less worried. However, he blinked in surprise when Naruto unleashed sparks from his left hand as he approached the water clones, causing them to scream. In a second, Madara watched with his active Sharingan as his brother's sword pierced the paralyzed clones like butter, causing their deaths. And then the boy leapt high into the air with a fierce battle cry that descended upon the real Taijima. The brutal kick he received in the stomach took the boy's breath away, while Taijima smiled smugly. But the gesture soon faded when the Naruto he had just kicked dissolved into water. Mizu Bunshin. Copy my jutsu, but without hand stamps, and win. And most importantly, where is it? Thought Taijima quickly. He gasped as something sharp pierced the back of his legs as the real Naruto emerged from the lake with his sword now stained with his father's blood. Taijima turned angrily, ready to strike the insolent boy, but he easily evaded the attack. Damn your Sharingan. Although he was glad that his clan had regained the prestigious power, it didn't change the fact that at that moment Taijima felt a slight disadvantage towards himself as his son continued to evade his attacks. He's trying to tire me out or waiting for an opportunity. When he has it, he will attack with his impeccable speed. How smart, but it's over, thought Taijima seriously. He was already blurring the hand seals of one of his most dangerous moves when a shadow appeared between them. Naori firmly grasped Taijima's hand and stopped Naruto's sword from continuing to attack with the help of a kunai. Enough, he ordered coldly. The fight is not over, Taijima said coldly, only to receive an equally cold look from her young sister. It's over, he ordered. Are you challenging me? Asked Taijima in shock. I will not allow you to kill a child to satisfy your ego, Taijima. More importantly, he is my nephew and I will not allow you to do him injustice, Naori warned, as Naruto's eyes widened as he saw her face his father like this. And it was for him. The next moment Madara also jumped up, and although he hadn't raised his sword like before, he seemed ready enough to make a move if his father persisted. He proved it, father. Much better than most Uchiha. It's done, Madara said seriously. Taijima glared at them and then looked back at Naruto, who was watching him calmly. The boy still seemed ready to fight, but he was holding back, waiting for the adult's decision. Then the clan chief also saw the crowd, and in his eyes he saw pure admiration and pride for Naruto. Everyone was tense, waiting for the next move, which finally made Taijima sigh. He placed his sword back into the scabbard behind him and watched Naruto do the same. Father and son walked toward each other, while Naori and Madara stayed nearby in case the situation got out of control again. Kneeling. The boy obeyed and respectfully knelt down as Taijima again removed his sword and tapped the boy's shoulder twice. Naruto, from the Uchiha clan, you have successfully passed the step rhythm, and I hereby welcome you as a full-fledged adult member of our prestigious and noble clan. Make us all proud, Taijima ordered. Naruto slammed his clenched fist on his armored chest and looked at his father with determination and pride burning in his eyes. Low hair, father. Despite everything that happened, Naruto still felt defeated when Taijima simply walked away without saying another word, while for his other children, he always had some good words when they completed the same test. But his disappointment was soon overshadowed by joy when Naori and Madara came over to congratulate him. And when Madara lifted him on his shoulders cheering him on, Naruto watched with a smile as his enthusiastic clan applauded him back. It was a good day. When the pair of eyes opened again, they widened in shock and disbelief as in the darkness of the valley he saw a figure waiting for him. Are you crazy? The giant fox asked in disbelief. Naruto smiled at the comment as he showed his official Uchiha clan jersey to the giant fox. Well, I'm an adult now, so according to you I'm now one of the male cult, Naruto said shamelessly. Why are you here, boy? Asked the fox with a strange sadness evident in his voice. To his utter chagrin, Naruto simply ignored him and left some scrolls on the ground. With a single seal, he opened them all, and, to the fox's surprise, a wide variety of foods appeared. I'm celebrating. It was close, so I thought you'd be hungry. What the hell are you looking at? I'm not going to finish all this by myself, Naruto said with a smile, pointing to the hunted deer, ramen, 5 types of fish, rice, and many other dishes along with the meat. Why are you here? The fox asked again, causing the boy to frown. I had a hard time stealing this food from the kitchens, and I hunted this damn deer myself. Quick thing dash. Why are you here? To the fox's surprise, the boy advanced until they were both 2 centimeters apart. Naruto looked directly into those demonic eyes, this time without fear or hesitation. Not all of us are crazy. The fox had barely gotten over his surprise at those words and the boy's actions when he stretched out his small hand forward with a bright smile on his face. Naruto Uchiha, son of Taijima, brother of Madara, and second heir of the main family. The fox stared without blinking until he suddenly received a strong blow to the head that made his eyes open comically. "It's rude not to say your name when someone shows up," Naruto said with a pout. "I'll kill you," promised the angry fox, but again he was speechless at the clarity and conviction that came to the boy's jovial eyes. "You would have done it when we met. Someone as powerful as you doesn't hide here in this stupid valley, so close to the border of the Uchiha clan, for no reason. Am I right?" asked Naruto seriously. The fox stiffened, making the boy smile. "It took me 6 months to discover it and read many more books until I finally discovered the truth. You're a Biju, right? A great being of chakra and power. The books called you Kyubi and said that your species disappeared thousands of years ago when the First War broke out." Naruto asked curiously. "You talk too much," said the fox irritably. "What's your name?" asked the stubborn boy, causing the fox to roll his eyes. "They already call me Kyubi. It doesn't matter what stupid humans call me. I care." For an instant, the fox's gaze softened at the sound of those words and the sincerity visible in the boy's eyes. Maybe the old man had made a mistake. Maybe this time things could change. "You're annoying," muttered the Kyubi, causing the boy to roll his eyes. "Wow, thank you, giant and stupid fox," Naruto replied with a smile. "I'll kill you," the beast growled. "Please do it. I'll eat you." "Why? I brought you so much delicious food." "You are bad," Naruto said with fake tears rolling down his cheeks. "Oh." Naruto chuckled as the fox roared madly in frustration before slamming its gigantic head into the ground, creating a small tremor throughout the valley. "Kurama." "Huh?" asked the boy confused. The fox barely spoke in whispers. "My name is Kurama," said the irritated fox, earning a bright smile from the boy. "A nice name. It's a pleasure to meet you," Naruto said cheerfully and tightly shook his small hand with one of the beast's huge legs. When he looked up, he saw Kurama staring at him with a strange look present in his demonic eyes. "Aren't you afraid of me, girl?" the fox asked seriously. "It was before, but for the past 6 months I've watched you from afar. You don't interact with anyone or go hunting. You just stay here, in this dark valley, sleeping. At first I thought you were a slacker, then I thought maybe you were protecting my clan. But none of our books mentioned someone like you as an ally. And then I remembered that you said that my clan has the madness passed down from generation to generation. And then I finally realized." Kurama's jaw dropped at this young boy's deduction, which he demonstrated by looking the fox straight in the eye with a knowing look. "You're watching my clan, waiting for something to happen. I don't know what it is, but I guess it's not pretty or good for my people," Naruto said coldly. "You're smart. I never thought that those brothers would manage to create an intelligent one again." The beast sneered, causing Naruto to frown. "Those days are long gone. Inbreeding has been reduced in our clan, and, unlike our ancestors, we no longer kill each other. Killing a relative is the worst crime an Uchiha can commit, and is punishable by death. Maybe my clan was bad before, but we can change. We're not all crazy psychopaths," Naruto argued fiercely. "Is that what you are here for? To set an example?" asked Kurama with a mocking smile. "Yes." The fox laughed, but this time it didn't have a mocking tone. Instead, the beast sounded funny. "It won't work, boy. My oath is absolute, and I will fulfill it even if that dark day comes. Even you can't stop me from doing my duty," Kurama warned, but the boy still didn't give up. "Well, then it's my duty to make you see my people in a different way. I'll make you change your mind," Naruto promised confidently. "What a statement. I'm not sure you can fulfill it," challenged the Biju. "We won't know unless you try." With these words, the boy brought the deer closer and placed it in front of the fox. "You're a strange child," muttered the fox in an annoyed voice, and though he had no need to eat or drink, he grabbed the deer with his big jaw, if only to please the smiling boy in front of him. "Get used to it. Now we are friends." A few days later, Madara and his squad sped across the borders, anxiety and fear evident in their eyes. They had left a few days ago to destroy some Saratobi who were trying to assault one of the villages protected by the Uchiha. While all the monkeys had been killed, Madara received a distress call directly from his home village. That had happened an hour ago, and he hadn't wasted a second to get back. His group was tired, but they still ran as fast as they could. Fear for the safety of their families burned in their terrified hearts. Had the Senju attacked with full force? Or was some other group about to attack its borders? Madara burst through the gates without even looking at the guards, his eyes fixed on the monstrous fire burning in the spot where the sacred Uchiha temple once stood. He climbed to the rooftops, jumping between the houses without even looking back to see if his followers were behind him or not. After several long minutes, he arrived at the scene. And what he saw left his heart paralyzed. Around him were dozens and dozens of members of his clan, many trying to put out the fire with water jutsu, while others stood motionless in horror. Because there, in front of them, were almost a dozen corpses. All the Uchiha, men, women, and even small children were shot like animals. His horrified open eyes stared into the dark night. The sacred grounds of his temple are now ruined with the blood of his own family that soiled the once green grass red. And in the middle of the massacre was the person who was being looked at with hatred by the entire clan. The 6-year-old boy was sitting on a wooden chair with his bloody sword in his hands. His Uchiha attire was stained with the blood, flesh, and dirt that surrounded him. Madara stopped breathing as a pair of familiar eyes looked at them all. But where once there was joy and innocence, there is now a fully activated Sharingan with 3 glowing tomes. And when those same unsettling and terrifying eyes so filled with darkness looked at him, Madara could only say one word. Naruto. Madara couldn't move or breathe as he watched his younger brother sit in the middle of the massacre with the bloody sword in his hands. Time seemed to have stopped for the elder brother, for neither the sight of the corpses of his clansmen nor the chaos around him disturbed him. The only thing that mattered to him and what he could concentrate on was his brother's gaze. This was not the same brother so full of joy and innocence, one much more honorable and kind than most Uchiha of this generation. No, the person sitting in that chair was someone else. Because in those eyes there was hidden an indescribable horror and immeasurable pain. It might be hard to discern behind the young man's dark look, but Madara knew him better than everyone present. He knew that his brother was stronger than all of them, both in strength and character in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. Nearly a dozen fully armed Uchiha guards marched towards the lone boy, but they all stopped when the bloodstained Naruto Uchiha got up from his chair. "Stop before I kill you all," Naruto warned, without a hint of emotion in his voice. Each and every Uchiha taunted him with endless hatred burning in their eyes. "Relative killer. Traitor. Breakers. You're a monster. A man without loyalty or honor." Madara watched his father impassively as members of his clan berated his own son. Taijima didn't feel a great affection for Naruto, but this was going too far. Being his father, why didn't he defend his own son? He looked back at his brother and saw the same impassive look of his father burning in his eyes as everyone, male and female, cursed him. But no one had the courage to stop the bloody boy holding his bloody sword. However, they must have taken Naruto's silence as cowardice when 2 older men, nearly a decade older than his younger brother, charged forward. When they barely managed to draw their swords, they only saw a blurry image and screamed the next instant as blood gushed out of their severed legs. The 2 Uchiha screamed in pain, losing control of their weapons and falling to their knees as their hands desperately tried to stop the large cut on their legs. However, Naruto's defensive action only seemed to make the crowd even angrier. Madara was too surprised or horrified to see his brother pull out a kunai and throw it a few feet away from him, marking a boundary that no one missed. The message was clear. Cross the line and you'll come to an end. The sight of the 2 older Uchiha still injured screaming in agony, along with the sight of all the Uchiha that the boy had previously slaughtered, made everyone shudder. The boy's bewildering gaze only seemed to make him look more terrifying. The air was laden with murderous intent, the smell of rotting flesh, and doom. Madara felt as if her worst nightmares had come true. If losing 3 brothers in one battle was devastating, seeing what was happening before their eyes was heartbreaking. The worst thing was that I didn't know what to do. Luckily for him and his furious clan, someone did. Enough. Taijima Uchiha's voice was still as calm as ever despite the dire situation. His gaze, cold as ice, fell on his youngest son, who was staring at him with a blank stare. I command you to surrender now, Kingslayer. Madara didn't look at his father, nor at the angry crowd protesting the order and instead demanding that Naruto be killed right there. All Big Brother Uchiha really saw was the slight trembling of Naruto's lips as his father called him by that insulting name. The boy raised his sword in the air, causing almost all of the Uchiha to step back in fear, but they were relieved when he instead stuck the sword into the ground with a loud noise. The next second, several guards appeared around Naruto and roughly grabbed him before starting to drag him gracelessly as they tried their best to stop the murderous mob from killing the boy right there, but they couldn't do anything to stop them from shouting a word at the top of their lungs. Murderer of relatives. Madara walked towards his father, and despite the most threatening look of his life present in his eyes, Taijima looked at him calmly. What happened? Hissed Madara. Your brother went crazy and killed these people. Now I have to fix this mess by doing justice, Taijima said with some irritation, as if he cared in the least about Naruto's fate or what this meant for the boy's future. But of course, she had never worried about her youngest son. A lie. You know he would never do something like that, Madara protested. Your love for him blinds you to his flaws or his crimes, Madara. Think of the clan, Taijima warned coldly. The clan. Taijima's eyes widened, surprised to hear the ever-loyal and obedient Madara utter those dangerous words. While they were uttered in a whisper, leaving those present without anyone noticing, the murderous look in Madara's eyes was proof enough that he was serious. He's my brother. I don't care who he is or what he has done. I know him better than you, and nothing will make me believe that Naruto did this. Or even if he did, it wasn't without reason. And if you do him any harm, then what, boy? The darkness and hatred in Madara's eyes made Taijima shudder and take a step back. I'm going to kill you. With those words, Taijima's eldest son fled towards the dungeons where Naruto was being transported. But his words would resonate in his father's mind for a long time, and Madara's gaze would torment him every night. It was dark. Darker than most places Madara had ever seen in his life, and only the flickering lights of torches hung on the adjacent walls indicated the way. He saw a detachment of heavily armed guards standing in front of one of the cells. As he approached, the 5 of them placed their hands on the hilts of their swords. No one can visit the Kinslayer without Taijima-sama's permission, warned Yamato Uchiha, the man's voice as unpleasant as the scar on his face. He's my brother, Madara hissed, his eyes glowing a red that made everyone except Yamato take a step back. Because everyone knew, even before the Sharingan awoke, that Madara was stronger than everyone. But Yamato glared at the action with an even more stern look. He killed my cousin. For the first time, Madara felt his aggression diminish, for this man in front of him had indeed lost his family that night. This caused Taijima's eldest son to disconnect and look at the guards wearily. I need to know what happened. He's my brother, and while I've always been loyal to our clan, I will not hesitate to hurt you if you stand in my way, Madara warned. Yamato stared at the boy for a long moment before shaking his head in disgust. Taijima-sama will know about this, Madara. But go see the Kingslayer, for he will probably be executed tomorrow morning, Yamato said viciously, earning the nod of the other guards. Madara smiled, and that sent shivers down the spine of each and every guard. You are free to try. They turned out of their way and opened the wooden door, protected by seals that never allowed any prisoner to escape. Madara still felt the burning stares raining down on him and turned with an obvious murderous look. When he unleashed a quarter of his killing intent, he smiled as he saw them all fall to their knees. I will massacre all their families and those who try to harm my brother. Don't forget your place. You can protest to this extent because my family allows it. I love our clan and will protect it until my last breath, but I will not hesitate to murder you all if you or anyone else dare to even lift a finger against my family. Do you understand? He was satisfied when 3 of the guards urinated on each other, and the remaining 2 trembled in terror, including Yamato. And although Madara did not like to treat his clanmates like this, his father had always engraved a single truth in his head. We are the blood of the dragon, and dragons only respect strength. Show weakness even for a single second, and you will be damned forever. Madara's family had maintained leadership for centuries in their clan, greedy for power, just because they were the strongest. And while they had done everything they could to make the clan thrive, their ancestors had also protected their own families from enemies and allies alike, no matter the price. And that was precisely what he intended to do. When he entered the cell, it was even darker than the hallway, so he was forced to pick up a torch from outside and slam the door in the faces of the still terrified guards. A pair of red eyes stared at him from the darkness that was now fading. Madara couldn't help but hurriedly walk forward and wrap his brother in a fierce hug without caring about the fact that the young man was drenched in blood. Madara. I'm here, little brother, Madara said. You should go. He broke the embrace and stared into those eyes with a fully developed Sharingan. If someone had told him that Naruto would one day become the first to attain this full power in centuries, Madara would have scoffed. But his brother had proved exceptional. Each of his actions is proof of that statement. Why? Asked Madara seriously. I killed them all, Naruto confessed, looking his brother straight in the eye, and he didn't miss Madara's surprise. But despite that, his brother never looked at him accusingly. What happened? Asked Madara patiently. Naruto looked away, unable to continue holding his brother's gaze, but Madara grabbed him by the chin, making him look up again. No matter what happens, or what you've done, or even why, I'll always have your back, Madara promised. Why? Naruto asked sadly. Because we are brothers. Naruto stared into those eyes and found only truth and love. Madara had always loved her brothers fervently and fought for them as best she could, and although her relationship with Naruto had not been ideal over the years, it had improved greatly in the last year since they both lost 3 of their brothers. That pain and suffering forged a bond stronger than anything either boy could have left in their lives. Finally, the younger boy nodded and, hesitantly, told his older brother the events that led to such a tragedy. Madara listened with a silent horror that spread through his heart, then was replaced by fury and disgust. When Naruto finished the story, he was bravely fighting back his tears as he looked at his blood-stained hands. Murderer of relatives, Naruto said with a tired sigh, staring defeated at the dark ceiling. Madara glared at him for saying that disgusting word. Don't say that. He reprimanded him harshly, but Naruto looked at him calmly. It won't change the truth, brother. That's how I am, and I'll continue like this until I'm executed, Naruto said in a resigned voice, which made Madara glare at him with an even fiercer look. No one is going to hurt you, little brother. Not as long as I keep breathing, Madara promised. He surprised the young man by grabbing his blood-stained hands and squeezing them firmly with his own. Will you fight for me? Naruto asked with the slightest hope present in his voice. Do I have a choice? Asked Madara with a smile, causing Naruto to smile, but it came out more like a wince. My father doesn't want me, and I guess after what I did, he will be forced to take action against me because of pressure from the rest of the clan. Surely everyone is demanding that the Kingslayer be executed, as the law dictates, Naruto suggested, causing Madara to frown as he heard his brother pronounce again the cursed title he had been given that night. That may be true, but don't forget that you are the heir to our clan in case he dies. You are also the only person, other than me, to have worn the Sharingan in centuries. Despite what happened, the clan needs you. I need you, Madara said sincerely, the last part barely above a whisper. You can't fight the whole world for me, brother, Naruto said softly, knowing that for all his power, Madara was still just a child. I can, Madara said defiantly. Taijima's eldest son walked towards the exit and opened the door quickly, to the terror of the guards, who were still trembling and shuddered at his icy gaze. But before leaving, he stared at his brother. Because I am Madara Uchiha. When he entered his house and marched upstairs into his father's room without warning, he found Taijima sitting at his table with Naori by his side, both brothers looking pensive as their hands gripped their respective cups of sake tightly. "Have you forgotten your manners, boy?" asked Taijima in a somber tone, but he did not look at his son, who glared at him. "What are you going to do with my brother?" asked Madara. When Taijima did not answer, Madara advanced aggressively, but stopped when Naori looked at him pleadingly. Looking his aunt in the eye, the boy relented and was rewarded when Taijima spoke. "The people demand your head, Madara. And you're going to give them just that, aren't you, father? You've never loved him." Madara snapped viciously. Surprisingly, Taijima simply nodded. "Yes, I have never loved your brother. But he's my son and I don't want him to die like this," Taijima admitted. "Me neither. But it's going to be very difficult to protect it. He killed a lot of people," Naori said hesitantly. Madara glared at the two adults and their pathetic resolutions. And do they dare to call themselves Uchiha, descendants of the dragon? Do what you want. But remember this. Both Taijima and Naori looked and saw the killing intent burning in Madara's eyes, sending a shiver down their spine. "If someone tries to harm my brother, then you will have 2 relatives killers and many Uchiha dead," Madara promised. "Madara, I know the truth, father." Taijima's eyes widened, horrified, as he realized that Naruto had told his brother why this tragedy had occurred, despite his warning to keep his mouth shut forever. But, of course, Madara was all that Naruto had in life. The last person the child trusted and even loved. Even if Madara had never known the truth as originally planned, Taijima doubted that his eldest son would have refrained from defending his brother. And through it all, Taijima was relieved that his family's future was secure in the form of the unwavering loyalty that existed between his 2 sons. Now he could see it. Madara was no ordinary person, and not just because of his powers. But in those cold black eyes, Taijima saw an inexhaustible strength. This boy was strong, determined, had the power to make men kneel or just pee in fear, and he spared no mercy to those who hurt him in any way. The most dangerous was to threaten his family. However, when the Uchiha overcame tonight's tragedy by restoring their pride and glory, it wasn't just for Madara. No, it would be for another boy too. But he would never be loved or admired like Madara, for he would be hated and spat on for the rest of his life. Someone whom parents could warn their children not to become. Murderer of relatives. "We'll take care of this," Naori promised, staring into Madara's harsh eyes. The boy stared at her for a long moment before nodding and walking back to the door without saying a word. "Where are you going?" asked Taijima cautiously. Madara was a calm person most of the time, but when he got angry, he was capable of dangerous things. And right now he wasn't angry, but completely furious. And Taijima was not afraid for her son, but for the fools who might try to anger Madara or worse, curse Naruto for his crime. "To the dungeons," Madara admitted, standing at the exit of the door. "You can't be there, Madara," Naori said seriously, and shuddered when those cold eyes fell back on her. "I'll be there, protecting my brother, and any fool who tries anything will lose their mind over my sword. Make sure no one tries such stupidity, Auntie," Madara warned. Naori nodded weakly as Madara looked at her father. "I'll bring it to you tomorrow morning. Call the elders and the council. I would like to talk to them," Madara said candidly. "They won't listen to you," Naori said honestly, for even if he was a strong fighter, Madara was still a child at least to those older than him. He smiled back at her. "Then I will cut off their useless ears." The next day, when Naruto entered the improvised meeting room organized in his mansion, he saw all the elders and other members of his clan's council present. The majority of the council was composed of several small, wealthy families or with the most powerful warriors. Those positions changed from time to time when families lost their wealth or stopped producing quality warriors. The same happened with the elderly, only that their change took place by order of the clan chief or when he died. They all obtained their rank through merit and not by the glory of long-deceased ancestors. Those were the customs of the Uchiha, and according to the same customs and rules, someone like him alone could receive punishment for his crime. Death. He saw it in his eyes. Most of them wanted him dead, and those who didn't seem openly hostile didn't seem very happy either, because in the eyes of each person, he saw the same accusation always present. Murderer of relatives. At Madara's insistence, he was dressed in the dark robes of his clan instead of the prisoner's uniform. But all of his weapons were confiscated, leaving him vulnerable to any attack by these men or women. He doubted that such a thing could happen in the presence of his father and aunt, or because Madara stood in front of him like a hound. He stared at his elder brother and couldn't help but feel grateful to him. Because when everyone turned their backs on him, Madara supported him. Even after knowing the truth about why he did what he did, Madara never changed his mind. Naruto had always known that his brother was the strongest fighter, but now he knew another fact about his brother. Madara was a better man than he was. Whatever his fate today, he was proud of his brother, and if he somehow survived, he vowed to support Madara no matter what. For his brother, he would do anything, for it was all Naruto had. Finally, Taijima broke the heavy silence. Naruto Uchiha, you have been accused of killing the members of your own clan. What are you alleging? Asked Taijima directly, interrupting any unwanted jokes, as no one was in the mood for that. Guilty. The camera would have erupted in anger if Taijima hadn't raised his hand to silence the others. His father might be a cold man, but he was still respected and feared by the rest of the clan. Why did you do such a thing? Asked Ayato Uchiha, an old man who had lost an eye fighting for his clan with both hands. Everyone was waiting for the reason for such a gruesome massacre, but the young man remained silent. Madara clenched his fists tightly as the stares intensified. All he wanted was to beat them all, for they had no right to look at his brother like that. Not after what he did. But he also knew that in Naruto's silence was the salvation of his clan that was just beginning to regain its lost glory. We should execute the kinslayer, Hotaru Uchiha heatedly expressed, having lost his younger brother to Naruto's sword. He has confessed to his crime, and the law is clear in this matter, Taijima-sama. Itami Uchiha said calmly, but his cold dark eyes did not stop looking at Naruto with displeasure. The rest of the council raised other demands of the same nature, and while Taijima remained silent, it was Madara who was on the verge of exploding. Unfortunately, there were many in the room who had lost close or distant relatives in the massacre, and the clan chief's silence was taken for hesitation or something more dangerous, weakness, as one of the bold elders gestured to the nearby guards who nodded. When 10 of those guards took their first step, Madara drew his sword and activated his Sharingan, provoking sharp gasps from all who had never expected such an action from their famous hero. Madara, what does this mean? Asked one of the elders angrily. It was again Hotaru Uchiha who glared fiercely at Madara. You've lived your whole life for the clan, Madara. Are you going to die for the Kingslayer? The woman asked incredulously. Madara's gaze made her shudder as his killing intent ignited, causing all the guards to fall to their knees and the council to cling tightly to their chairs. Someone is going to. The boy promised. Enough. Taijima's authoritative voice stopped the commotion instantly, as even Madara lowered his sword at the sight of his father rising from his chair. Proud. High. Imposing. I won't execute Naruto, Taijima declared, eliciting gasps of surprise followed by heated stares from everyone. But Dash protested Hotaru. Outside. Madara smiled maliciously as the stunned woman looked at her cold father in shock, which only made Taijima look at her more harshly. You are removed from this council. Your family is disqualified for 10 years from competing for your seat, declared Taijima. Naruto looked at him in shock. He knew his father was powerful, but it was the first time he had seen him in action. Hotaru Uchiha bowed respectfully before hurriedly leaving, which seemed to cause the rest of the council to submit to the leader. And when the same man looked at him with those intimidating eyes, Naruto involuntarily straightened up a little. I know what he did, but you forget that he has the Sharingan, and he is one of our most powerful fighters. He and Madara helped us win that important battle against the Senjus. Our enemies fear us again because we have the Sharingan. And what's more important, it's my son, Taijima said coldly. Many lost some of their anger when they realized the power that Naruto wielded. Killing him was easy, but it would harm the clan, For all his crimes, he was a dangerous fighter, even more so with their Sharingan. Perhaps you are right, Taijima-sama. And while we still don't know why he killed his own people, we know he's just a newly arrived adult. And am I right to assume that Madara opposes this decision? Asked Yamashiro Uchiha, Itachi Uchiha's father and one of the council's most influential members. If you kill my brother or even try to harm him, then I will not only kill the fools who attempt such madness, but I will leave this clan forever, Madara promised without hesitation. Naruto was stunned by what his brother had just said, and that was it, as the whole council panicked instantly, as Madara was one of their most powerful fighters. In the future, he had the potential to become the strongest and most capable of slaughtering the Senju and all their enemies single-handedly. Although killing Naruto would be a blow, losing Madara would be devastating and leave the future of his clan in darkness. And these men and women knew it. That's when Naori chose a different approach than her brother and nephew. I personally apologize for what Naruto has done, but he's still a kid, and we don't know yet if anyone influenced him to do such a thing. They could be our enemies, Naori suggested. I find it hard to believe. An old man commented skeptically, looking at Naruto harshly. Be that as it may, I will not execute my son, but I will not let his crimes go unpunished either, Taijima declared, which finally seemed to calm the council. Madara was about to protest when he felt Naruto gently grab his hand. When he looked at the brown-haired boy, his brother shook his head, silencing Madara. Naruto Uchiha. The boy stepped forward and looked his father in the eye. For your crimes, I denounce you. Madara's eyes widened in horror at his father's decision. I separate you from my family and make you my heir after Madara. Even the council members and elders seemed surprised by the decision as they looked at the father and son. And I will banish you from all our lands and from our hometown for 10 years. Naori looked down because she knew that the last part would be the hardest. I forbid you to marry, have children, and own land. Starting today, you'll serve as Naori's bodyguard, protecting her on clan missions. If your behavior and actions prove redemptive after 10 years, I or the next clan chief will consider bringing you back. But you'll never have a family for all those you destroyed with your actions. A heavy silence descended within the room, interrupted by the trembling of Madara's hands as he gripped his sword tightly, waiting for a single cry for help from his brother. Because this sentence was worse than death. It was a curse meant to turn a man's life into hell. But even as his anger boiled, Madara observed that most of the people in the room seemed quite satisfied with the judgment because they now understood that killing Naruto was indeed a merciful action that would never heal his wounds. But this? It would make the child suffer every day of his life. Every moment would be hell. And through it all, he would still be an Uchiha ready to be used for his clan's purposes. Madara walked up to his brother and grabbed him by the shoulders, causing the young man to look at him. You don't have to do this. I do, Naruto replied sadly. Why? They don't deserve your loyalty, Madara said fiercely, earning a nod from his brother. I'm not doing this for them, Naruto confessed. Then why? By Izuna. For our brothers who died so that this clan could live and thrive. I promised them that I would protect what they gave their lives for, no matter what. And I will keep my word, Naruto said seriously. Madara was both proud and heartbroken by his brother's decision. But the pain, Madara said sadly, receiving a forced smile from Naruto. As long as I have you, I don't need anything else. A lone tear fell from Madara's eyes as Naruto stepped forward and knelt before his father. I accept. As he said those faithful words, in his heart the young boy knew that his life would never be the same again. 2 weeks later, Naruto stared at the lake in front of his family's home, a place he had known forever and where he had created most of his happy and sad memories. He looked at the training yard and the small forest surrounding the mansion where he and his brothers used to train together. He observed many things, each with specific memories associated with it. Now, dressed in his clan gear, he was ready to leave his only home for a long time. Maybe forever if I didn't manage to survive until the time came to return. If that time ever came. He touched her cheek and found it covered with a dark mask to avoid the stares and mockery that were constantly thrown at her after the trial. The first days had been chaotic. Although many were satisfied with the indulgent but cruel decision, few still demanded his head. Fortunately for them, the old man's watchful eye and Madara's threat to massacre entire families of those who dared to attack his little brother kept those people at bay. But that never kept those muffled whispers, those heated glances at bay, or the term that was always associated with him. One that will never go away even after you die. Murderer of relatives. Unlike what his clan or even his own family believed, he did not commit those murders out of madness or manipulation. Nor did he willingly accept the trial to save his life or to remain loyal to the clan just for the sake of his dead brother. He did it because it was his duty. Because in this world of endless war, he would find no other family than the one he was born into. However, it wasn't easy to deal with that name, to stare into those accusing eyes, to endure those whispered curses. That is why he had put on this mask to hide his smile, because every time someone called him Kingslayer, he smiled. Because he knew why he did what he had to do, aware of the consequences. And he did not regret it, even if it cost him everything in life. But his smile would send the wrong message that would only increase the attacks on him. And while he could defeat most of his aggressors, even he had his limits. Besides, his family was already in enough trouble, and there was no need for him to aggravate them. His thoughts were interrupted when he felt another person walking beside him. "Are you ready?" He looked at his tall father and saw that his usual stony gaze was replaced by something he couldn't understand. "Yes, we left at midnight by Naori-sama's decision. It's better this way. There are fewer fools to entertain." Naruto joked with a mocking smile, but it faltered when Taijima looked at him sadly. "When you hear them whisper Kingslayer behind your back, doesn't it bother you?" The older Uchiha watched as his son stared at the lake with such harshness in his eyes that it should never be there in someone so young. "Of course it bothers me, but I will face it," he replied defiantly. "If it's any use, I'm sorry, Dash." Taijima stopped instantly as the murderous gaze fell upon him. "Don't mock my duty, father," warned Naruto. Taijima nodded, looking the young man straight in the eyes. "You prove me wrong, you know." Naruto blinked at those words and couldn't hide his surprise as he looked at his father, who was looking at him almost with an affectionate look. "How?" "I always thought you were the weakest of all my children. You were weak and had no talent for wrestling. But when it really mattered, you stood up for the clan, your family, your siblings, and even me. You sacrificed your honor for all of us," Taijima said in pain. "Father, Naruto said hesitantly, unable to believe that he really saw his father, his bloody and cold old man on the verge of tears. "Madara may be stronger than you, but you have a strength that he may never have. You look a lot like your mother in that aspect," Taijima revealed as Naruto's gaze dropped. "Look where that took her." He looked up as a steady hand rested on his shoulder. "He never regretted giving you life. He gave you your name, wished you the best in life, and finally died with a smile on his face, holding your tiny figure in his arms." The boy's hands trembled as Taijima continued. "Mothers are powerful, son. Even dead, she lives on in you. She gave you her kindness and strength. She made you strong enough to overcome all the challenges that came your way and those that will come in the future. She gave you everything I never gave you, and even so, what you did for me is something I will never forget," Taijima said sincerely. "You gave me life, father." Taijima looked away from those powerful eyes, so similar to those of his deceased wife, as a lone tear fell from his eyes. It took him a while, but he managed to control himself and turned to his son. He surprised the boy by giving him a long sword with flames engraved on its steel and whose hilt contained the symbol of a dragon. Naruto was speechless. "I can't accept this. It's not my right," Naruto said fiercely. "This ancestral sword was given to me by my father, and to him, his father before him, and so on. When he gave it to me, my father told me that it is not a weapon to kill only your enemies, but a symbol, an oath you take to protect the clan from all enemies, no matter who they are. A promise to be fair and equitable to your people. Each leader of the Uchiha clan passes this relic on to whoever can guide the clan to a better future, Taijima explained patiently. I am no longer your heir, father. He is Madara's by right, Naruto argued, as he never wanted to take something that rightfully belonged to a brother who fought for him so fiercely against everyone. Madara will hold this clan together with his power, but he lacks vision. But you are different, and I entrust this to you in the hope that you will find a better future for our clan. Besides, Madara hates swords, Taijima said with a slight smile. Naruto blinked like an owl, causing his father's eyebrows to twitch in annoyance. Did you just joke? Naruto asked in disbelief. Shouldn't I? Taijima asked flatly, causing Naruto to struggle to find an answer. Taijima smiled mockingly, earning an accusing finger from her son. You did it on purpose. And then they both laughed, perhaps for the first time together in their lives, while Taijima hesitantly ruffled those brown locks that were the same as Hikari's. Do as your aunt says, and try not to cause her too much trouble. And if I hear the slightest rumor that you visit brothels or bars that dishonor your name, I'll make you a eunuch, Taijima promised grimly. But again she only got the boy to roll his eyes. As if Kinslayer wasn't enough, Naruto muttered. What was that? Nothing. Taijima sighed. I say this because women and alcohol are a shinobi's greatest weakness. You can't be a warrior if any of your senses are distracted in any way. I see great potential in you. Don't waste it, Taijima advised. Hello? And try not to fall in love or some other nonsense. I won't allow such a thing, Taijima warned. Father, you just forbade me from marrying or having a family. It will only be more painful if I commit an even greater folly knowing that I can't change my destiny, Naruto said wearily. The blow he received on the head almost made his eyes pop out. The old man was strong. I say that because that will make it very difficult for me to find you a suitable Uchiha girl. Naruto stared. And I got another harder blow to the head. Did you really believe that I was going to sacrifice my heir, my son, his future for those fools despite knowing the truth? Let them calm down. Your absence will speed up the process while Madara and I try to make this incident a distant memory. I suggest you do something great or extraordinary that will greatly benefit the clan and help bring you back to our people. It won't be easy, but it won't be impossible either, Taijima explained sincerely. But what if even then they don't change their minds? Asked Naruto hesitantly, still trying to get over his surprise at what his father had just said. Taijima sneered. A dragon doesn't care about the sheep's opinion. Most of the time, added the father with a smile. You're funny like me, Naruto said with a smile, while a smug smile appeared on Taijima's lips that made him look much younger. You did not receive all the good things only from your mother, Taijima scolded, but without the usual warmth present in his tone. When Taijima presented the sword to him, Naruto respectfully accepted it and saw the man smiling proudly. I'll fix it, son. The only thing I regret is that things had to go so wrong for me to understand you, confessed Taijima, quite embarrassed by the treatment he had given his son during all these years. The grief of the loss of his wife blinded him to the diamond she had left behind. And although today the entire clan spat on his son, Taijima was proud of him. Better late than never, father. The boy offered her his hand with a mischievous smile and a kind look, without reproach despite everything Taijima had put him through. This only made Major Uchiha feel more guilty as he knelt down and hugged the boy, who stiffened, having never experienced so much affection from his father. And he said those words that Uchiha Naruto had longed for all these years. I am proud of you, my son. Once, he walked through these streets without paying attention to the people around him. Most never acknowledged it. The few who did, in general, did not even bother to greet him, as his own family had not shown interest in him at the time. But when he won the battle against the Senju's Sharingan awakening, everyone respected him overnight. As needy as he seemed, he had enjoyed that attention. Even now it continues to attract the same attention. But where once there was respect and pride behind that, it was now replaced by contempt and utter hatred in those eyes. Everyone hated him. Murderer of relatives. I could hear the whispers no matter how quietly they spoke. They didn't say anything and just stared at him when he was in front of them. But as soon as he turned his back on them, they whispered. And he smiled, walking even more upright and proud, which only seemed to infuriate his clanmates. As he looked into his hate-filled eyes, those heartbreaking words returned to his heart. The ones he had heard that night, the ones that made him raise his sword and kill all the members of his clan he saw. The same words that led him to become what he was, led to all of these people judging him as if he was the worst shit ever born into this noble clan. But he reminded himself that this was his choice. And now he had to endure it. One of the older women spat at his feet, receiving a mocking bow in return. A middle-aged man showed him his finger and received the same gesture from him. A boy younger than him threw a small stone at him that he easily dodged and stared at the mass of people gathered with amusement shining in his eyes. Is that all? I think dragon's blood is more capable than that, Naruto joked. He smiled as they all shuddered and looked at him more harshly. However, they separated, opening a path that led to the gates of their city. If one thing was certain about his clan, it was that they all obeyed orders and firmly believed in obeying those above them, even if those orders did not please them. It was those orders that allowed him to walk these streets and not be mutilated to death. But that fate would have been much kinder and faster than the utter hatred in the eyes of his people. There was a time when he had many followers and people who admired him, but now they were all gone. And as he walked through the streets that led to the road outside his city, he felt so alone. When that pair of demonic eyes opened again, he expected many things, but to his utter surprise, it was sadness that he saw in the beast's eyes. Murderer of relatives. Naruto bristled at that name as he didn't expect even the fox to call him that, much less to know what happened that led to him being dishonored. The beast must have read his mind as he responded easily. My ears hear in the distance. Do you think I could keep an eye on your clan from here if I didn't know what's going on? Asked Kurama, amused. Then you know what happened. The fox nodded and saw the boy shrug his shoulders. Come on, mock me then, I don't care, Naruto said nonchalantly. The fox stared at him. Is that what you want? The beast asked, with surprising calmness, and saw the boy shake his head. It doesn't matter what I want. I care. Naruto stared into those eyes looking for any signs of pity or lies, but he didn't find any as Kurama stared at him. Why? Because I know the truth, Kurama whispered, and he saw the boy glare at him. You'll never say another word about it, warned Naruto, and even more surprisingly, he got a nod from the beast. You remind me of a guy I knew before he changed and became someone I could never recognize, Kurama said reminiscently. Who? Asked Naruto. Silence was his response, and he wasn't surprised because the beast was like that and had a lot of secrets, and he had to admit that it made him wonder even more. Kurama watched as Naruto took out at least a dozen scrolls from their various bags and opened them to reveal another river of food. When he looked at the boy, he shrugged. I thought we could share one last meal before I left, Naruto said hopefully. I don't have any need to eat, Kurama recalled, as the boy rolled his eyes impatiently. Please me, Papa Bear, joked the boy. I'm the big fox, Kinslayer. Kurama chided him, earning a loud laugh from the insolent brat. Whatever, Naruto replied with a smile, causing Kurama to sigh. They both ate in silence until halfway through the meal they were paralyzed and their cold eyes narrowed suspiciously. Kurama was impressed when in one swift movement Naruto unleashed his new sword, masterfully wielding it as if it were part of his body as his Sharingan came to life. The fox himself got back on his four legs and towered over the boy as they both got ready. We have company. Kurama waited expectantly as he sensed the mass of intruders drawing ever closer into the dark valley. There were many of them, which made the giant fox growl, but, on the other hand, his unlikely ally remained calm and collected. There was strength and grace in his posture. The ease with which he wielded his long sword demonstrated his skill with the weapon. Su Sharingan was quickly looking for the first enemy that approached. But the most surprising thing about the boy was his appearance, which was exactly like that of a boy Kurama had met a long time ago. The resemblance was unsettling to the beast, but unlike in the past. This time it had a faint hope in its heart. Because this boy in front of him, despite having a similar appearance and great power like his ancestor, had a factor that set him apart. Naruto Uchiha was a good man. A person who deeply loved his family and clan, going so far as to stain his own honor and life to keep them safe, while his ancestor had chosen power over blood. Kurama only hoped that Naruto's sense of honor and loyalty would not fade over time, as it did with most Uchiha. Even if he were known as a Kingslayer today, Kurama wouldn't have any other Uchiha by his side other than this boy in the upcoming battle. He was pulled out of his inner thoughts when Naruto spoke. "They are here." Kurama smiled sarcastically as the dozens of armed warriors, clad in heavy armor, stopped at the sight of him. His eyes, wide and terrified, gazed at his monstrous figure and the 9 dangerous tails that fluttered wildly. He couldn't help but laugh to himself at his fear, but he also felt disgust at their weakness, for they were the blood of a man he had loved deeply. The Kagaya and Hagamo clans. "It's quite strange to see them together," Naruto said curiously, but the frown on his face was enough to show that he was worried about this new development. The enemies seemed to whisper something to each other, causing Kurama to growl furiously. Naruto looked at the fox with a knowing look. "Something tells me they're here for you," the boy suggested. "And so do you. They plan to kill or capture you for your Sharingan," Kurama warned. The beast felt a chill run through its body as Naruto's eyes turned icy, his face a mask of contained fury, making his red eyes seem even more menacing. "Scared, Kingslayer?" Kurama joked. "In your dreams, fox," Naruto replied irritably, but there was a funny smile on his face. "There are quite a few of them." "Did you forget who I am?" asked the boy, with that famous Uchiha arrogance present in his voice and an arrogant smile on his lips. But while most of his clan members couldn't make those words come true, this boy could. The fox surprised his unlikely ally by simply sitting on the ground with an indifferent smile on his bestial face. "Come on, follow my flow." Naruto smiled. "I don't work for free, fox." A mixture of amusement and curiosity quickly crossed the Biju's eyes as he narrowed his eyes at the statement. But even so, he made a decision quickly. "You're interesting, Kingslayer. Show me what you have first," Kurama challenged, earning a mocking bow from the young man. "I'm your humble servant, Papa Bear," Naruto joked. Kurama growled angrily at that ridiculous nickname, but before he could respond with a proper response, Naruto advanced towards the approaching enemy force. The enemy made his intentions clear when he charged forward with thunderous battle cries and his various weapons crying out for blood. Kurama's eyes widened as he saw Naruto flex his sword, pouring chakra into it, making it glow a deep blue. He knew this sword. He remembered who had created it and used it in each battle. It had never been broken. And now, seeing that same sword being wielded by this brown-haired boy with heavenly fair skin and delicate features along with that famous Sharingan removed the last doubts from Kurama's mind. "Indra, even dead, you are still alive. It seems that this time you are truly reborn in this child." Kurama felt something different in Naruto the first time he met him by chance. It was different. Their traits, their chakra, their abilities. When the boy spoke of his family, of his dead brothers, Kurama felt in him the same love and affection that Indra felt for his own family before everything went terribly wrong. Naruto adhered to the same sense of duty and loyalty that Indra had developed in his own house, the Uchiha. The only difference between those two was Naruto's sarcastic humor and the fact that Naruto gave up his honor and life for his family, while Indra renounced his own family. Naruto let out his own war cry, thrusting his ancestral sword into the ground, unleashing a violent roar that shocked his enemies. Rocks and debris fell from the surface of the valley due to the tremors, disorganizing enemy forces. And then the child charged. He appeared after his first opponent with a shunshin, splitting him in half in one blow. A rain of electricity gushed out of his left hand, stunning 5 more enemies within range. Naruto raised his sword and blocked the attack of a Kagaya woman who growled wildly at him. His mistake was to look him in the eye. When he mercilessly beheaded her, the members of her clan backed down. The stench of death and decomposing bodies no longer bothered him. His fears no longer troubled him, for he had seen and done far worse. He was a murderer of relatives, and these people meant nothing to him. Realizing that they were more vulnerable when facing him alone, the combined warriors from two different clans banded together and unleashed a full volley of kunai and shuriken in his direction. Naruto roared murderously, releasing a huge amount of chakra from his body, sending out a brutal shockwave that scattered all the projectiles flying towards him. He clasped his hands together and looked menacingly as he finished gathering his chakra. Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu, Water Liberation, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. Kurama's eyes widened as Naruto created two huge water dragons out of thin air, demonstrating his skill with the element. The summoned beasts roared as their creator infused them with electricity, giving them more power as they charged at their terrified enemies, who expected no such power from someone so young. When the cackling water dragons crashed, nearly 7 enemies were crushed while the rest barely managed to jump to safety. When the carnage was over, Naruto walked towards an older man, in his 20s, who was writhing and crushed, his body torn apart by severe burns. He would not live long, but death would not come soon, leaving him in deep pain. Kurama watched Naruto quickly bury his sword in his enemy's trembling head, mercifully ending the man's last, painful moments. Monster. The boy smiled sarcastically when one of the Hagoromo warriors called him that, but he prepared himself when he saw the enemy deploy and surround him. It's clear that they don't want me to wear my jutsu anymore. He looked at his enemies. There were nearly 10 of the dozen who had arrived, and they were all trying hard not to look him in the eye. That gave him a clear advantage in this fight, but they were more numerous, and he sensed that the Kagaya's swords were definitely impregnated with poison. He cursed himself for not having his armor with him right now, as it would at least give him some protection. Another point to keep in mind for the future. Instead, he took one of the swords from a nearby dead Hagoromo and brandished his now 2 swords at his enemies. Kurama watched this young man bravely face men and women much older and experienced than himself. A smile spread across his face as all the enemies attacked him at once. Naruto deflected his ancestral sword forward, breaking the counterblades of 2 Hagoromo, slitting their throats instantly. With his other stolen sword, he blocked the blows aimed at his back and delivered a roundhouse kick to the 2 in front of him, knocking them down. The fox watched as the enemies attacked the boy and laughed. Naruto performed a quick shunshin that passed right between his enemies. 3 men and a woman fell dead to the ground, decapitated. The remaining 5 enemies stared at the boy as he swung their swords with ease despite their weight in his small hands. He is strong. Kurama's sentiment was confirmed when Naruto blocked 5 swords with 2 of his own and kicked one of the attackers in the testicles. The boy roared, pushing his enemies back, making them stagger momentarily. The boy took advantage of that moment to pierce 2 more hearts with his sword. With only 3 enemies remaining, Naruto's smile widened, but his focused eyes were fixed on his opponents. But that smile disappeared from his lips as 3 giant tails grabbed the last enemies, and before he could say anything, he was bathed in flesh and blood as the soldiers of the enemy clan were brutally crushed. He stared at the fox that was laughing fiercely. "You stole my deaths," Naruto said petulantly, as a pout was drawn on his lips. "Do you like the shower, Kinslayer?" Kurama replied with a mocking smile. Naruto shook his head and obediently wiped the blood from his ancestral sword as he threw away the stolen one. He walked toward one last Kagaya woman who was writhing in pain. He bent down and looked at the wound he had inflicted on his heart. She's strong. His end was near, and yet he saw her raise her hand to his eyes, wishing to pull them away from him. He took it gently and scanned his mind with his Sharingan. When he finished, he was alarmed, but he kept his composure looking at the woman who was still staring at him with her dying eyes. "Rest now," he ordered with his Sharingan. The woman named Kimi looked at him one last time before her pained expression disappeared and her eyes closed forever. When he got up from the corpse, he saw Kurama watching him intently with a question present in his eyes. "What?" Naruto asked irritably. "She was your enemy," Kurama remarked, confusion in his demonic eyes. The boy smiled. Sometimes it's better to have mercy even with our enemies, Naruto said kindly. You enjoyed killing them, Kurama said accusingly, earning a fierce look from the boy who surprised the beast. I enjoy the battle, not killing, Fox. Remember that, Naruto warned. Why? All life is precious, Naruto replied sincerely. Then why are you fighting? Kurama asked curiously, and saw an expression of pain but determination on the boy's face. Because I serve my family, my clan. It's my duty to protect them, no matter the cost, or my pride, Naruto said faithfully, which made Kurama smile. So what's your dream? More than just keeping your family safe? Kurama said seriously. Naruto remained silent for several long moments, his young and sad eyes looking at all those he had killed moments ago, and then at his own hand that held his ancestral sword. I guess. Kurama waited when the boy hesitated as his lips trembled. For once in my life, I want this never-ending fight to end. The boy looked at the night sky with the moon illuminating the vast landscape. I want to serve something bigger than my life, something I believe in. I want to end this war and create a place where people can live together without prejudice. And for that dream, I will risk my honor, my life. When Naruto looked at the fox again, he saw that the Biju had once again adopted one of those illegible looks in his demonic eyes. You're different from your crazy clan, the beast whispered. Naruto smiled arrogantly. I told you that we are not all crazy, Naruto joked. Kurama simply laughed, which made Naruto smile, but he soon disappeared at the boy's next question. Do you have a family, Kurama? The question asked out of curiosity evoked an expression of extreme pain in the fox's eyes before he closed those demonic eyes, probably remembering his own past. Naruto, despite his young age, understood that the beast didn't want to discuss this, so he turned around and started walking away. Murderer of relatives. He turned and saw that the fox was staring at him. Why did two clans attack you? Kurama asked seriously and saw Naruto stiffen a little. Word has spread that the Sharingan has awakened in me and my brother. All the clans fear that my clan will regain the lost power and want to stop it before it harms their interests. Interestingly, the Kagaya clan was informed of your existence and came here to capture you, Naruto explained frankly. They should have brought more fools, and even that wouldn't have been enough. Kurama sneered with a laugh, but when Naruto didn't share the feeling, he looked back at the serious boy. This was a test, he replied. And we pass? Kurama asked knowingly. Naruto nodded. Then the next attack will be big, the beast said, earning a nod from the boy. I need to see my family. Inform them of this, Naruto said candidly. And tell them about me too? Kurama asked dangerously, surprised by the boy's decision. Naruto smiled. No, I gave you my word that I will keep your existence a secret from my clan. I am not going to break my promise. Kurama relaxed and seemed quite pleased with the decision, which made him look at the boy curiously. Where will you go? Asked the beast, and he saw the boy shrug his shoulders. Wherever duty commands me. Kurama nodded, smiling at the boy. Goodbye, Kinslayer. Naruto smiled back. You too, Papa Bear. And then he walked away, leaving Kurama alone. Taijima looked at his bloodied son, thankful that Naruto hadn't entered the village in such a state, for fear that people would think he had murdered other members of his clan. Although he was surprised that Naruto had created a secret passageway to enter and leave the town as he pleased. He should be angry with the boy, but Naruto's steady gaze and what he had just revealed made Taijima think of something else. Did you kill them all? In single combat? Asked Naori in surprise, earning Madara's ridicule. He's the best swordsman I've ever seen. He can handle it, Madara boasted, which made his younger brother smile proudly. Anyway, it seems that our enemies are now actively moving against us. We need to prepare, Taijima ordered. We need to bring our allies together and get more political and economic support from the different daimyos. It will take time, brother, Naori suggested, to which Taijima nodded. Then you're leaving in 2 hours. I am increasing the armed force and the servants who will assist you. Naruto, you will be responsible for your aunt's safety, Taijima ordered, and was happy when his youngest son knelt respectfully. No harm will fall on Nosama until there is life in me, Naruto promised, earning an amused smile from his aunt as he remembered that not long ago this young man had been quite different from what he was now. But many things had changed in his life. What will you do, brother? Naori asked curiously, causing Taijima to look at Madara. We will begin to attack the Senju and their allies. Your goal is to seize as much territory and contracts as possible while weakening your sworn enemies. I will personally lead this campaign, with Madara as my second-in-command, Taijima decided, bringing Madara to a smile. Good. I've been waiting to make those tree huggers pay for what they did to my brothers, Madara said darkly, hatred visible in his eyes. Naruto frowned at his brother because while his family had lost quite a bit due to the Senju, it was also true that both he and Madara had murdered many Senju. Men, women, and children who were related to many others. He idly wondered that if his clan managed to defeat the Senju, then what? Would they then go on to fight another clan? What was the purpose of this senseless massacre? Was there a way to stop it, or at least reduce its scope? Many questions tormented his young heart, but at the same time, he knew his duty. He was an Uchiha, regardless of his reputation, and he would serve his clan regardless of his personal feelings. Because even if he wanted to change things, he had no power. He had already been disowned, forbidden to start a family. His name was sullied. He was no longer the heir of the clan. This made him wonder if his decision that night was right or wrong, as he now understood the consequences of his actions. He looked at his brother and saw in Madara's eyes the desire to slaughter all the living Senju. His brother would not rest until they were all dead, and then look for another enemy to quench his thirst for battle. Madara loved challenges, especially battles, and unlike Naruto, his older brother didn't mind killing. The weak deserved to die. That was Madara's philosophy, and although it annoyed Naruto, it didn't change the fact that she loved him deeply despite his flaws and faults. Because when everyone abandoned him, Madara did not. And for that alone, Madara would have Naruto's unwavering loyalty no matter his decisions. Naruto was surprised by his elder brother again when Madara approached with a heavy chest in his arms. Curious, he watched as his brother opened it and revealed a finely crafted gold armor with the image of a dragon in the center and the symbol of the Uchiha on the back. For me? Naruto asked with a broad smile. Of course, little brother. Consider it my parting gift, Madara said with a proud smile, happy that Naruto liked the armor that had been made for him. After all, it had cost quite a bit of money. Naruto noticed many seals on the armor and a very sturdy helmet that would protect his face and head in combat. It was unique, as no other Uchiha had worn anything like that, but he couldn't deny that he would be better protected with it in combat. Madara noticed his lingering look on the stamps and explained. Those are chakra seals, little brother. They will regularly absorb your chakra in small amounts, and in combat, when you are low on energy, you can recover it to replenish your reserves. Plus, this armor will keep you warm in cold weather and is breathable enough to withstand warmer weather. It will expand on its own as you grow and is strong enough to withstand strong jutsu, not to mention weapon attacks, Madara boasted proudly. Whoa, Madara, how much? Naruto was stunned when Madara raised his hand to stop his brother from asking that silly question, but he was forced to do so when Taijima got up. Where did you get this? Asked Taijima earnestly, staring at her eldest son. The black markets. It took me quite a bit of gold to get it, but I had saved enough from my previous missions. The merchant said that this was done by the Uzumaki clan, as only they are so skilled in the sealing arts. Even I must say that, despite his distant alliance with the Senju, his capabilities are quite good, Madara praised sincerely. Taijima nodded, and Naruto noticed his father's gaze towards his aunt. Something happened between brother and sister, an unspoken agreement that Naruto couldn't decipher as Naori nodded in understanding. You should be more careful with your money, Madara, but I'm glad this helps protect your brother. Taijima said neutrally, making Madara and Naruto smile. We are rich, father, Madara said with a serious expression, earning a brief laugh from Taijima Uchiha. Yes, it's true. Thanks to your aunt and her skill in trade and negotiations, Taijima praised, as a slight blush appeared on Naori's cheeks. Naruto looked nostalgically at his happy family and couldn't help but remember Izuna and how happy it would have been to see them all happy like this. He clenched his fists as he remembered the silver-haired Senju who killed his beloved elder brother. And he swore to kill that bastard, no matter what. By midnight, the convoy was ready. Taijima glanced at the wagons filled with provisions, money, and scrolls that authorized Naori to negotiate on behalf of the Uchiha clan with whomever she wished. His decisions would be binding on the entire clan, provided Taijima gave the go-ahead. The clan chief watched the 24 servants who would assist his sister with her daily, administrative, and service duties, along with the entire convoy in general. These were people who could not fight and were therefore trained to serve their superiors. Among the others were some prostitutes who entertained the guards as they pleased. While Taijima detested this practice, he also knew that men were weak when it came to money. Half of this convoy was made up of security forces, composed of some of the best Uchiha